Hello, good morning, everybody, and welcome. It is June already, June 4th, 2022. So this is lesson 12 of level 2. And what I've been doing is alternating lessons for full spectrum humans. I've been alternating each week between level 1 and level 2. And not to give you whiplash, but usually what I would do is 1 hour of level 1, 1 hour of level 2. That was what I did in previous semesters. And the semester moved ahead much quicker. And I'm telling you, I don't know how I did that because I've been just having so much to share in every level, in every lesson, that it's always 2 hours plus, especially when we do Q&A. So rather than try to fit ourselves, if you're whatever size you are, rather than try to fit into something 2 sizes too small, let's be comfortable. So I'm making the container fit us and fit our needs. We'll be here for about 2.5 hours. Had some technological difficulties this morning because now I'm not coming to you from Tuesday mornings. I'm coming to you from Saturday mornings. So this is like Looney Tunes or your favorite Tom and Jerry cartoons that you watch on Saturday mornings. So yes, because I have a new lovely work commitment that is during the weeks on mornings. So doing positive work, positive angelic assignments, moving my light here so you can see me better. All positive, good things. However, that takes up Tuesday mornings for me. So I've switched to Saturday mornings, and hopefully that will even broaden the number of people that can tune in directly and instead of catching the archive, because they also might have Monday through Friday. However, I sent out a link this Monday to everyone and put it on the calendar, and it seems like the link in the email is not functioning properly, and it also seems like the link on my calendar did not function as expected. So thank you for bearing with me. It's starting a little late and I don't have as many people signed in as I thought I would. There we go. Now people are starting to sign in. So that was why I was even doing a little bit of let's talk and let's get together. Melissa says my volume is down a little bit. Let's do a sound check. Thank you, my lovely people, for helping me. As you know, I'm doing this as a one person experience here. Like I take care of everything is what I'm trying to say. This is me taking care of everything. Oh, look, you can see more crazy stuff in the background. Okay, so we've got books, antiques. Come on down, my goodness. Hi, Hans. Thank you for tuning in. I was joking with everyone. Don't pay no attention to all the stuff that is packed up behind me. My roommate is busy unpacking things. Okay. Hello, welcome. June 4th, 2022. Level 2, lesson 12. It's time for me to get to the meat and potatoes. This lesson is called the I Am God Circuit and Redefining Death. So I'm going to talk about a lot of things that are really relevant to your life and to your existence right now. And I'm also going to contrast what I've been learning about in terms of shadow work from my recent experience over the past year with what I recorded here that is recorded almost 10 years ago. So my perspective, when I've recorded all these lessons, like I talked about the description of this chakra and this chakra as being a marriage before, like in idealistic terms, before I really even understood what marriage is like for many people in this time and place, and that it is a word that often does not bring to mind the ideals that I speak of it in terms of equality and partnership and other forms of accommodation, energetic and accommodation according to the form, according to the ability, according to what you do. Hello, Martine. Thank you for tuning in. I know there was some challenge with which Zoom link is correct. And so I'm happy that you found the correct Zoom link and came here today. So what I'm talking about today, a lot of it is what people now call shadow work. When I recorded this lesson, again, it was more than 10 years ago, and there was not the current, what would I say, milieu of shadow work ongoing. It seems that there are trends that happen that are sometimes natural, that are sometimes augmented or given assistance, like everyone is encouraged in some larger sense to towards certain inner psychic pursuits. So I'll just put it out there. I'm just going to stop dancing around on eggshells here. That I think that shadow work as it is presently being presented within the past year or two is highly flawed, and that it is not the pure ideal work that I speak about in terms of the recorded lesson that was done like almost 10 years ago. It's like 8 or 9 years ago when I recorded that lesson about being an ascended master, casting a shadow, what is your shadow, and how it is resolved. I'll get to this at the end of this broadcast, but what I want to first say is in the recorded lesson part 2, that's what I talk about. I talk about being an ascended master is like being a piece of coalesced light And just if I drew something like a box, an object, here's the object, and then light is cast upon the object, and there's an area of shadow. There's a flat two-dimensional area where light does not go. I'll go into this in depth. The whole idea is, I was trying to say 10 years ago through my idealism, that when you are an ascended master and you're a coherent light being, and literally every single form of who and what you are matches with your divine characteristics and the divine characteristics of the sun and the solar presence. That should be the big takeaway. Apologies for any ramble that I started off with, because I've got craziness in my room behind me and technological difficulties. Now I'm getting to the real crux or focused salient information of what you want to be knowing in the next couple of hours. That ascension and becoming a coherent light being and becoming an ascended master has everything to do with a transformation, rearrangement, and refinement of who you are, until you are identifying with and embodying nothing more than the divine personality aspects of you. And divine being, I have this container, and if God comes through this container in this time, in this place, the end result of God action, Godding with God, is this experience, this, who I am. Everything that I say, everything that I do. I'm not going to break into that song from the 80s, Every Breath You Take, because it's too early in the broadcast for me to get silly. I'm not allowed to get silly yet. That comes in hour 2 or possibly 2.5. Every move that you make, every action of your being, every thought of your being is in perfect divine alignment. You have these chakras that move in perfect divine alignment. Your chakras are your timelines. They are your possibilities and your probabilities, and they are intimately connected to your DNA on a subcellular level. All these amazing tiny little strings that you can play and exemplify with and be a genetic virtuoso as you are moving your body through time. Your DNA is doing amazing things. Your timelines are doing amazing things. Every single nuanced little subtle thing that you do in terms of the movement of your mind, your energy field, where you're going through time, is in alignment with that greater music. I should have turned on my thing, but I had crazy music going on before. Hold on a second. Turn on my thing and see what it plays when I talk about the beautiful music of the cosmos. Oh, it sounds pretty weird because I have a synthesizer setting on there. The beautiful music of the cosmos that you are in alignment with. So there's a much, much larger song, the Symphony of Life. That now I will break into song, because that is one that's worth looking at. I wrote that last year, and it's on my album Under a Gentle Sun, which is all about being under a sun that is the true, gentle, golden light that comes into our solar plexus, not a hot, white, burning light or anything that is artificial that has been keeping us from the true light. And we'll acknowledge that as we talk about your true solar presence and true solar possibilities and probabilities, and who you are in terms of the characteristics and identity. When you identify as a light being, you identify as a piece of the sun. And this is big, and it's not nearly by accident or coincidence that the word for Son of God, S-O-N, and the large faith-based community that is in worship of that idea structure, that person, that being, that concept, the Son of God, and then also the sun in the sky. These phonetics sound exactly alike, and there's very much an allusion and a connection between these two things. And we go all the way back to Judeo-Christianity as an outgrowth of ancient Egypt. Ancient Egypt worship, and I should say reverence for the sun and the solar disk, which was seen as a face looking down upon you, or a ship looking down upon you from the sky each day. I talk about coherent light beings that follow the sun going all around the earth. This is what I do when I do this vocal toning workshop with my lovely colleague Trish, who's in Lebanon. She is at the beach at my 9 a.m. She's at the beach, her 7:30 p.m. with the video showing the sun going down and sparkling across the water, and the sparkles across the water make a bridge on the screen going all the way out to you. And then you see the sun's solar disk where my face is. So it looks kind of, like this, like here, I should make it shaped like this with my arms stretching out. And these are the wonderful, sparkling, twinkling light codes that are on the surface of the water. And it stretches all the way out to the disk of the sun, which is like a face that is there radiating, giving us nourishment, giving us thoughts, ideas, possibilities, and probabilities that we ingest. And then what we do is we loop it back. We're like, I take that into me, I take that being and understanding, comprehension into me, and I send it back to you with all of my flavors. Because here's what I'm experiencing. Here's what my body is metabolizing like here's the stuff that is going on a chugga metabolism level. And then here are my thoughts and cares and concerns as an embodied ego structure. And then here's my time body and what I'm doing. It is exactly like having a rapport with aspects of your body. Like, I don't know if you ever do this, check in with your body, like sit and feel your body. Like, how does my shoulder muscle feel? How does my blood feel? How does my digestion feel? Like, this is what we're doing with the sun. The sun is checking in with us and being like, you are my feelers. Let me feel from you. What is going on with you in your life? So it is very powerful, very present, and it is co-creative, because you're saying, you might say something like, ow, my this hurts, or I need more of this, or I want my life to change in some way. Or you might be saying, my life is bliss, and every day I swim through a sea of, I joke about, strawberry juice, I swim through whipped cream, and strawberries are on top of it, and everything is fabulous, and nothing is a problem at all. Like, you might send back signals like that. We're all laughing in irony because we probably don't know anybody in this time and place who's feeling that level of bliss and joy and freedom, because we live in a difficult time, but we're coming out of a difficult time. And everything that I am talking about has to do with, what do we do with those pooties? What do we do with those pesky occupiers of the interstices? Hat tip to Pedro, former concurrent student of my class, that came up with that acronym, POOTIS. The pooties, the pesky occupiers of the interstices. So I'm going to get to my notes, but I also want to tell you all about this. In looking at the membrane of death, so I usually draw my time vortex. You're all experts at this point, so I'm just not going to whip out the thing and just, I'm moving at fast paces here, and I'm going directly into your mind with your consent. Sloped sided vortex shaped cross section of time, where the sloping sides are, that is the membrane of death. They are arcs of a larger circle. I draw them as fat, but they are incredibly skinny. They're actually two-way highways where there is a sheet of energy that is flowing in one direction and a sheet of energy that is flowing in another direction. These areas have become blockages, blockades. Like, we got some of this stuff that needs to get unboxed, right? So that's causing a blockage and a blockade. We can use that as a real life example, that if these boxes are in the hallway, I can't walk through the hallway. Boxes are undigested emotional energy, detritus, and things that need to be healed. And there's a big difference that needs to be made here. Now I will actually grab this and make a distinction by drawing it out. There's two different things that are stuck on the membranes of death. Let's not be afraid to say the word death. This lesson today is all about redefining death. Let's not be afraid to say the word death. Here is my time vortex. Here's a big fat membrane of death, and also an extremely exaggerated wormhole. I'm going to change this for privacy's sake just to me. Here's the starting line. Here's the wormhole up here at the top. Let me give you a beautiful purple ascended master pathway that goes all the way up through the wormhole and reaches infinity. Oh, make a good infinity sign. All right, makes a beautiful infinity. That is what is known as the 0th dimension, the singularity. This is not synonymous with the proposed singularity blending together of human plus AI machine mind. That's another topic I'll talk with you about. The infinite journey. Infinite journey. This is a being on its journey of infinite light. This is an ascended master. We are ascending masters. Basically, every single one of us has within the time vortex of who we are, these potentials. The yellow timelines represent potentials that end on the membrane of death. The purple timeline is the one potential, literally one single timeline out of this whole entire time array that allows for an exit from this level of reality, or a graduation from this level of reality. Everything about this is a refinery of your characteristics. So if you are heading off to the side and you go over to that membrane over there, and that's where you splat on the windshield, that's a bug on the windshield of time, that's where you get, or a gutter ball. If you hit over there, then it's time to recalculate and learn new lessons, because basically you did a math problem that is supposed to end with you going up and out through there, and instead your trajectory wasn't right. You swirled around and went like kaplooey, kaplooey. by navigating the events with the chakras of your body and with your mind and with other aspects of how you feel and are guided by your GPS. All right. So the whole idea is, if you have made this type of a journey, ended up on the membrane of death as a, let's say, miscalculation in your own life, that does not make you a bad person at all. Let's play some wrong notes. No, none of those are the right note that I want to be playing. I want to play this note. That's the right note. So all of these yellow timelines represent wrong notes, not necessarily bad or evil or malevolent, but just wrong notes. 2 + 2 does not equal 5. If you try to say 2 + 2 = 5, you're going to end up here as a consciousness. What then happens is you de-identify with your ego, temporal ego structures, which are unmade, like a sweater that is turned back into a ball of yarn. Everything goes down this membrane back to the beginning, and you reassemble here. Go to the starting line again. And then you start to try your trajectory upward, 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 aiming for this wormhole, remaining on that one path of least likelihood. This central core timeline is your path of least likelihood. There's only one of those in reference to the many hundreds, thousands, millions, possibly billions of other timelines that you can travel on. And you can spend a pretty long time going around the washing machine like wrong note, 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 wrong note. Here are all these versions of you splatted on the windshield of time. And when I say splatted like a bug, I'm trying to be lighthearted, but really what it is I'm freezing. I'm a frozen moment. Frozen moment. Could be the frozen moment when you got hit by a Mack truck. Could be the frozen moment when you had a heart attack. Could be the frozen moment when you died of whatever, terrible disease, anything. What are the things that make you die? A meteorite fell on your head, a crocodile ate your face. That's this one over here, far outlier. Crocodile ate your face, meteors fell on your head, whatever made you die. That's your last frozen moment. But what happens is you then Pedro also came up with this idea. I'll go back to my face. Go back to my face. Wait, how do you go back to my face? How funny. Okay. Well, I don't know how to exit. Go back to my face. Here we go. Apologies if I just had a difficulty with that. Game over, try again. G-O-T-A. Gota. Game over, try again. And this goes back to, if anybody ever played Pac-Man, Pac-Man looks like a little circle who's chomping, 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 chomping away. And when he gets eaten by a ghost, he kind of goes and turns into like a nothing, and it says game over, and there's a little song that's like da 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 da, and then go back to the beginning, put another quarter in the machine and try again. But people don't play video games with quarters anymore, so clearly I need to update my analogies. I'll get to your question, Melissa. Thank you for being here, and just in this moment, say a profound thank you for all of the FRL work and connection that you've done over many years. So thank you for being, just period. The many cycles of people going through the washing machine or Groundhog's Day, trying to figure out what is the right combination of thoughts, feelings, behaviors, and events to be able to be in alignment with that central core timeline, being an ascended master. So a lot of it does have to do with self-cultivation and refinery of consciousness, meaning who I am and whom I am not. Now we go to the whiteboard, and I tell you all about the fatty blockages that exist there that have nothing to do with you. Wait, let me first, where'd my little thing go? First, let's draw a color that is you, that is yellow. Oops, wait. I know I'm pressing a lot of wrong buttons today. Here's a fatty blockage that's you, that's yellow, that's you, that's yellow. More you, more you. Okay, those are versions of you, not bad, wrong, evil, or whatever. Now let's, I keep doing that. Choose. I'm choosing a brown color, everyone. They're poopies. Here's a poop right here. And another one right here. And another one right here. Okay, I know, I'm joking also with lightheartedness, even though this can be very serious stuff. Why the brown color? Because I sometimes call them the turds who refuse to flush. And this also is appropriate because you're looking at something that is really a vortex from the side. So here it is from the top down. It's just like a toilet swirl, swirling on down, swirling down. There are things that are supposed to swirl away through the cosmic portal and not be simply just circling the bowl. These are the beings that have just been, circling the bowl for a very very long amount of time. Circling the bowl, they have set up huge encampments, they have set up huge organizations, cultures, if not civilizations, because I would hesitate to call them civilized, but they have a whole organized way of being, or semi-organized way of being. Yes, maybe culture is a better way of saying it. And there's a very, very big difference between the fate of these two types of consciousness energy. So in all of this, now I will make an allusion to like the whatever, some kind of a lollipop, where you've got, here's like the bubble gum that's in the center of the lollipop, the true nature of who you are. And then here's layers on top of there, layers of ego, layers of emotion. Here I'm getting to, wait, let me go to yellow for intellect. Layers of emotion, layers of intellect, all of these layers that are the temporal aspects of self. So this wonderful blue bubblegum thing, gumball, that is the true nature of who you are. It is pure consciousness and it is eternal. But all of these other layers that go on top of it are temporal. Now this brings me to my notes. This is directly from the recorded lesson. The temporal ego fears its own demise. The temporal ego exists at the level of the solar plexus. I'm encouraging people in the vocal toning workshop too to imagine it as a golden yellow light, the light from the beautiful gentle sun. It can be seen as a yellow, bright canary yellow light. It can be seen as, it is the light of, oops, I don't know why that just happened. Hold on a second. I have to, crazy things are happening. I'm like, the technology is out of control this morning. Wait, hold on a minute. Redirect and drink a little bit of water. The temporal ego and what it is to be. Just want to make sure that my audio is being audio. Okay, fair enough. It's all good. My audio is being recorded. The temporal ego fears its own demise because it knows that it is temporary. Temporary from the root word for time, TEMPS. Temporary, temporal, something that only exists as the end result of the experience of being submerged in time. What I just gave to you with the viewpoint of the time vortex is what it looks like to me and many others who exist at the fifth dimension and higher in terms of dimensionality and freedom. I now have to break in and do a brief aside. I experience moderate frustrations when people are talking about 3D versus 5D versus any amount D, 12 billion D, that I find that to be an unhealthy, unhelpful construct that is coming out of the parlance of the last 2 years or so. Again, just like shadow work, this imprecise language is doing a disservice to the very people who are using it. So 3D, the third dimensional box that I live in, is a third dimensional box that has an X, Y, and a Z axis. Other people are using the word 3D as a synonym for the mundane world with no additional supernatural overlays. I think that that is accurate to say, but please don't call it the third dimension, because the third dimension, the box that we live in, is absolutely magical place to be and is a part of the magical structure of dimensionality that goes from the 0th dimension all the way up to the 11th dimension and beyond. I teach you about dimensions: point, line, plane. Point being a 0th dimension, line being many, many points lined up next to one another. The first dimension, one piece of information. The second dimension being many lines lined up next to each other, creating a flat plane. Then you have the X and the Y axis. This is fast because it's review. Then many, many planes stacked up on top of each other like playing cards, creating a cube. Those are the 3 spatial dimensions and include the 0th dimension, which is infinity. On top of that, you have many, many, many boxes like train cars of reality in your DNA, and its amazing dance makes you jump from train car to train car. So we've been in the class for 15 minutes or so, or however many longer, and we keep on jumping through the train cars, which actually are time moments separated at the Planck length, the smallest amount of cake that you can chop cake into and still define it as cake, the smallest slices of time that you can take and still define it as time, the smallest, tiniest little units of time. And we are vibrating through all these different multiple units of time, like in a line that is the 4th dimension. And then the 5th dimension is lining up many, many timelines into a time plane. And the energy keeps on repeating from there. But I tell everybody, don't imagine a time plane. The 5th dimension is actually that world that I'm talking about of this, these 4 vortexes, vortex-shaped chakras. The 5th dimension is actually the bakery where the French breads are made. that if you think of a timeline as being a long skinny French bread and each slice makes a lovely bruschetta that you can put your little toppings upon. But what you're really talking about with the fifth dimension is not even dough, talking about the room where dough is made, the far back bakery area where you've got giant mixers, flour, sugar, water, yeast, the ingredients for reality. Time is reality. Timelines are reality. Third dimensional boxes are slices of time that contain reality. If you're like, I'm a new age person and I don't like the 3D because I don't like having to pay my Geico bill. P.S. I just paid my Geico bill. I don't like having to take care of mundane concerns. Calgon, take me away. I want bubble baths all day. I'm, of course, being facetiously petulant. And you can tell that I'm exaggerating in my body posture and my physiognomy. But this is a narration for anyone who is completely unable to perceive on those levels and is profoundly literal in everything that I say. For those who deny, reject, or do not enjoy aspects of the mundane world, they say, I want to get out of 3D and I want to get into 5D, right? And it's seen as an aspiration, and it's seen as an achievement and an accomplishment, and also the sense of, see ya suckers, you're stuck in 3D with your stupid Geico bills, and I'm here, zoom, up to 5D, and I am doing fun and amazing things in 5D. I'm kind of like embodying some kind of like supermensch, ubermensch super being up in 5D. All of that is a human anthropomorphic overlay, and it is coming through some profound vulnerabilities in human beings' understanding or lack of comprehension of the dimensional structures, and also a need fulfillment to get out of mundanity, get into magical or supernatural levels of being. And also for some people, the need to feel better than others. Like, you're suckers stuck down there in 3D, go pay your Geico bills. I am in 5D, a magical ascended reality. And then soon 6, 7, 8, 12D, I'll be more magical than any of you. I'm the most magical of any of you. And of course, again, I exaggerate and I am facetious because magic is not a competition, because ascension is not a competition, because this is a beautiful unfoldment, spiritual aspiration and achievement of divine reunion with God, reconnection with God, remembrance of self as God. This is what the I Am circuit is. It is both inevitable and it is sacred and divine, and as important and worthy of prioritization as any ceremonial or highly religious moment or experience. It is absolutely inevitable in each one of you, and it is the most special thing you can possibly do. It is not a competition. Big. So anything that is in the ascension community that is about that is really coming from the level of the ego, the yellow level. Imagine your ego as this beautiful golden yellow light, not this harsh canary yellow light that is the ego presence that we have been taught and cultivated from the human world of commodification, competition. I'm more than you. My ego is more than you. I'm taller than you. I have bigger earlobes than you. I have more money in the bank than you. I'm more this than you. And I'm more ascended than you. And now I'm like Hulk Hogan. I'm pretending that I'm like one of these wrestlers in a showdown. Hulk Hogan versus the Savage Man. I'm going to murder you. Well, I'm going to murder you. I'm more ascended than you. Which just sounds nonsense because I've taken the argument to its ridiculousness. I have exaggerated a particular argument comedically to its levels of ridiculousness so that you can see how invalid the basic premise is. Ascension is not about comparing spiritual growth, comparing how quickly it happens, comparing how high I am compared to you or how advanced I am compared to you. Everything about it is about your personal best, and everything about it is about the entirety, the holistic nature of consciousness, experiencing and reconnecting and acknowledging the wholeness. There's no way to be able to be in competition with others who are actually self as you are on your journey for personal development. When you really are heading towards unity consciousness, really the only sane response, as you begin to have more and more insight come in, you begin to see and experience and accept with your heart the information that is given to you through Christ consciousness, everythingness, and the connectivity of all consciousness. All you can do is celebrate. You can only, at a certain point, celebrate the successes and levels of increased self-development of others. There is not a way to be like, you're me and I'm you, but I'm rooting against you and I want you to fall on your face and I want to win the race. Nah, nah. Then I'll stand over you and I'll say, nah, nanny poo poo, I won the ascension race. Like, none of that is your true golden yellow ego. None of that is who you are, whom you are, when you are perfectly in alignment and all of your personality characteristics are the true nature of self that comes to you from divinity, from these pure levels of time that are perfect, that none of that is your divine perfection. All of those are characteristics that come from the periphery. And they might even have been pro-survival, because I'm going to fight against you in a showdown to the death to see who can be the best shoe salesman, or who can sell the most vacuum cleaners, or who can be, you understand, it is competition that comes out of the world of commodification. It is not even necessarily a competition that comes out of the natural world. Brief moment. Melissa, I just spied your question over there while I was drinking. I'm going to get to your question because it's so beautiful. Thank you for your thought patterns. The laws of the jungle and the laws of plants in a natural setting. These have been largely overlaid by the projections, the harsh canary yellow projections, ego levels of a man who lived in the 1800s, who came out of the Victorian mindset, Victorian Christianity, Victorian Northern European. He came from Charles Darwin is who I'm talking about, Mr. Charles Darwin. England is an island and they fight over their resources. There's not a lot of stuff there. People fight for supremacy. Do you get it? He does not come from a beautiful, abundant jungle paradise wearing minimal clothing and with, fruits everywhere, where there's enough of everything for everyone. He came from a place that had harsh winters, a lot of not enoughness. And the Victorians developed this religious ideal that if God favors you, then you will have enough. You will have even a top hat and a monocle and possibly a small cigar, or one of those long cigar holders like this. And then the ones who did not favor God will be gutter snipes. Remember My Fair Lady? They might be chimney sweeps. They might be selling apples for pennies, or even more, selling themselves for pennies. That was considered to be a fairness in their society. All of it you can tell now from the viewpoint of an outsider, culturally anthropomorphic outsider, looking at their culture, their biology, their weather, their social patterns, and the availability of resources and how that affected his mindset. You can tell it's, first of all, it's not holistic. That's not, everybody doesn't act the way everybody acts in merry old England. And also there were issues of various plagues and ongoing diseases that were also part of competition, biological competition. He took that world that he grew up in and he portrayed it and projected it upon the behavior of plants and animals. Melissa Ching, I'm going to get to your question, because I think that we might be rapport in telepathic communion here, jamming with some beautiful mindscapes. He looked at animals in the jungle and he said, they're fighting for survival. And also he looked at plants in a meadow and he said, they're fighting for survival. Only a certain number of raindrops fall on that meadow each year, each season, and every plant is like, those are my raindrops. I'm going to grow more roots. I'm going to get, those are my raindrops. Or I'm going to have big leaves. I'm going to collect the rainwater for me. I'm going to do this for me. I'm going to grow bigger than you, and I'm going to survive and thrive. Remember, I'm the Ubermensch, but in this case, it's the Uber plant. Dun, dun, dun. I fought for supremacy, and now I made it to the highest levels possible. I'm the most giant plant ever. Believe it or not. So those are ideals that were presented in the late 1800s through the cultural, anthropomorphic, and religious filters of Darwin and those who adopted his ideas. Modern exploration of the behavioralism of plants has shown that they actually work in collaboration and in community. So in a meadow, there are a variety of different types of plants. They have a variety of moisture and nutrient needs. They actually help each other to stay alive. They help each other through an undersoil system of connectivity that is called mycelium. This is MYCELIUM. A fun mnemonic device is to think of mice in their helium, like mice have little high squeaky voices. Mycelium. They are the fibrous connections that go between the roots of plants that are made out of fungi like mushrooms. Sometimes mushrooms actually create a mushroom head up above the soil structure. That's its reproductive organ. Many mushrooms, fungi, and mycelia grow below the soil level, and they are an absolutely essential part of having a healthy ecosystem. If you do any amount of gardening, you should learn about mycelium, because the mycelium that are in your soil, like okay, a brief aside, if I put together a soil for a potted plant, a pot plant, that has a ton of nitrogen in it, and I plant my plant and I don't have mycelium in there, then the plant takes up too much nitrogen and it gets burned, right? Lots of gardeners have had this problem because you might put in cow manure or something, chicken manure, something that's immediate nitrogen release. If you have this wonderful stuff called bokashi or grokashi, you inoculate the soil with this wonderful type of mycelium. The mycelia eat all of the excess nitrogen. The plants grow. Then the mycelium gently over time release the nitrogen to the plants in a buffered way, so that's exactly how much they need in exactly the right proportions for the plant to grow and thrive. A symbiotic or mutualism relationship between plants and fungi. This is enormous. This is profound. This is part of the random access memory processing power of our planet as a node of much larger supercomputer of consciousness. The actions required to monitor and oversee and coordinate the energy, nutrient, and consciousness that is going back and forth at the mycelial level is enormous. Just within 1 square foot of, let's say, a redwood forest, you have so many mycelial connections going on there. It's like a part of a brain, of a neurology. Within 1 square foot of soil, all right? You have so many signals vectoring back and forth, so much information, nutrition, and connectivity. And that's just in one part. If you look at an entire forest, like if you've ever been in a redwood forest, you are in a brain. You are in a living, active thought structure. And the vertical towers, the giant, tall redwood trees that might live for thousands of years if they are undisturbed, and their rings and their cellulose fibers are absolutely containers of knowledge. That is the ROM, the old memory, like memory that is stuck, that is stored, that doesn't change. And then the stuff that is going on below the surface level of the soil is the RAM, the stuff that changes on a moment-to-moment basis. I'm going to send energy, nitrogen, carbon over to you. You're going to send energy, nitrogen, carbon over to me. This is the complexity and miraculous, supernatural, amazing nature of what is happening in the biological natural world, that in many ways I think is more impressive to me than any subsystem that has been created by biological structures in terms of creating, an AI that runs in a computer or something like that. Like that, if you were like, this computer is now going to get hooked up and run the mycelial network in the forest, I think that the forest would outclass the computer. That the computer would be like, wait, like you're much faster than me. You've got more memory than me. You've got more of this than me. You've got more agility than me. And would be kind of like huffing and puffing to keep up with the amazing levels of synaptic productivity that are available in the natural world. Why do I say this to you? Because humans also have this inborn expectation, presumption that your mind is going to be slower and more clunky, inadequate, I want to say clunky junky, than a computer. That computers remember everything and computers can do things so much faster than your mind, and you're just this lowly thing. There are disturbances and challenges that have happened at the level of the solar plexus, your implanted human mind. In your brain, it is your cerebrum, the folded membrane that is the outer level of your neural activity. There are challenges and diminishments there. If you didn't have those challenges and diminishments, you would absolutely be acting like, quote unquote, a biological supercomputer. And you will get there. And this is part of what Ascension is. Taking a break, then let's get to Melissa's question. Melissa says, how do animals play a part in this? Try again scenario. Really great question, because I've spoken just now about animals. Mycelium are animals. Microbes in your tummy are animals. Cats and dogs are animals. My dog is sleeping in the bedroom right now. Animals that we eat, like cows, chickens, fish, those animals, all of these animals are involved in the necessity of death and the cycle of life. So if we use a fish for an example, a fisherman goes out and catches his dinner. That is the version on the fish reality of one of the fish's timelines that goes to the membrane of death. Try again. On that day, you didn't swim in the right direction. You swam directly into this guy's net and he caught you and he ate you for his dinner. What happens? What happens to that fish? the consciousness that is the inner gumball of consciousness, of its lollipop, remains truthful and continues to go on its journey, and eventually circulates. Ego goes away, eventually circulates back to the beginning. Game over, try again. It tries a different set of behaviors, approaches to the timeline, and calculations that do not end with that fish being in a net. P.S. Every single organism will ascend. That's big. What is known as heaven or the afterlife or the realm of paradise will be populated by more than merely humans. You must understand this. There is an ascended master version of all of these different organisms, planets, and even minerals that have a time cone shape. They've all got a central core timeline, path of least likelihood. They've all got a wormhole that they get out in order to reascend, go back to their godness. All of these beings and creatures and organisms are outgrowths of God. Everything returns to God. That's what the ascended mastery process is. Each one of us learns differently. The life experience of a rock shrimp or of a tuna fish out there is different than the life experience of you and I as human, and yet they are both valid and equal, and they are part of the multifaceted composite eye of true divinity. That is the eye of Christ. That is the eye of this abstraction, divine nature that encompasses every single organism of life that is here and elsewhere. Pull way back. Kind of feel the floor drop out from beneath you. That's a guy. That's a lot of God. That's a lot of God. And it's a lot of ascended mastery, and all of it levels up. We all came from that level of divine perfection and knowingness. This lesson right now is called the I Am God Circuit. It is a circuit of coming from the knowingness. Imagine the knowingness is my nose. And then you circulate outward into physicality, some confusion, some not knowingness, some forgetfulness. Who the F am I? What am I supposed to do? I have to pay my Geico bills. And then realigning through that central core timeline, coming back upward, reconnecting with my nose and remembering, I am the I Am God Circuit. In fact, I'm jumping ahead in my notes, but in your brain, here is how your brain works. You have neurons. Neurons are like a long highway that the nerve signal travels along. I'm a nerve signal. I'm traveling along the long highway of Aurora's arm. And then I get to the end of the nerve where there's kind of like these wiggly cell receptors. And the wiggly cell receptors want to connect with the wiggly cell receptors of the next nerve highway that then is my other arm. That, of course, connects back to my central processing unit in my brain where everything emanates from. But there's this gap between my fingers, this impulse of knowingness that's traveled along here has to jump, like jumping across the Grand Canyon. It might be a micrometer in your brain, but that can still be like, it's so far, how will I ever make it? Because they can't jump in their present state. So this impulse, that is an electrical similar type of impulse, has to change into a chemical impulse. And it translates itself into these little neurotransmitters. And then what they do is they float across. They're like, I'm floating in space. Now I'm going to do the David Bowie song, Planet Earth is blue, and there's nothing I can do. And they float off, and they're floating in space, and then they make it to the next set of wiggly little fibers. And they're like, I've just come into the next level of reality. They reassemble as an impulse, and they go up the arm as, again, electric-like impulse, like a waveform impulse, similar to electrons flowing in the wire of my light lamp over here. That is what we are doing in our life. That jump, that leap of one tiny little neural impulse, one thought, is analogous to our whole entire journey through the washing machine, through the refinery, through every single thing, every wrong note that we're not, until we get to the note that we are. And then that moment that we remember who we are, I am God. That moment is the moment of getting to the wormhole. It is the moment of returning to infinity. It is similar or analogous to the electron's leap. Here, wait, let me get back to the God color. Getting through this wormhole here and being able to make the leap into the next level of consciousness where there's another time vortex that's tiny, that's that big. And all of these very, very, very incredibly fine little timelines and possibilities and probabilities that are inside of there. And you try going up the center of that one too until you make it to infinity. It is just like the nested Russian matryoshka dolls. you continue onward on this infinite journey. In that moment of coming into the wormhole area, what you're doing is making that leap from an impulse into a chemical impulse so that you can float across, you change state, you make that spark. That's the best way I can think of it. In human motors and engines, there's something called the spark plug. There's a spark gap. There's an area where electricity must jump across a tiny little chasm. A little impulse jumps across that spark gap. That's what makes your car go. And so in your brain, in your mind, when you have these leaps going across of your neurons from one neuron to another neuron, that is a thought structure that is happening. And essentially your whole entire life, when you make it up through that wormhole, you have a moment of awakening where you remember, I am God. And what you're doing in that moment is analogous to making that jump across the synapse from one level of reality to the next level of reality. As you make that jump, you are in harmony with all of these other musicians who are also making that jump at the same time. Each first person experiencer thinks the thought, I am God. The fish thinks the thought, I am God. And the microbes in your tummy think the thought, I am God. Like I'm making a tiny little microbe voice. Your dog thinks the thought, I am God. Your planet thinks the thought, I am God. That is what mass planetary ascension is. All of these various different beings, organisms, and trajectories coinciding. Coincidence not meaning random or not intentional. Coinciding in math means they coincide, they come together. They are very, very intentional. This is the aiming of many, many time arrows to the bullseye of the target, where you're supposed to be. So your big takeaways here, your journey of ascended mastery does not take place in a contextless void. Although at a certain point you redefine and redirect, refocus your energy specifically to your journey and your ascension, because you recognize that everyone else is on those peripheral timelines that do not go through the wormhole. There's only that one little spot for you to dive through. So only at the very, very end. Like it's important for you to be connected in community, to love and be in love with all of those others who support and sustain you and all of these other wonderful organisms and microbes. But at a certain point you disengage in order to go through that wormhole. You're like, I am just me, being me in the truest sense of every single personality characteristic that I am and none of the things that I am not. And I go through that wormhole. When you go through the wormhole, when you go through the sun and take a sun bath as a true ascended master being, every single one of your chakras is in perfect alignment. You look exactly like all the paintings that I paint that are idealized structures, just like the Grecian marbles. They show perfect musculature forms of everybody that is the idealized form of what it is to be human. They all look like super athletes. It's amazing. Every single energy being that I paint has perfectly aligned chakras. No one's off to the corner like this. No one's off to the corner like this. No one's wibbling and wobbling all around. And that is the goal of what you want to be shaped like. When you are shaped like that, your personal music fits perfectly as a harmonic fractal within the larger music of time. That means everything that you've ever said and thought and done and experienced and what you have initiated and what you have been receptive to and the way that you have swam and flown through time is a perfect divine complement to the larger levels of reality that have been going on. There are big, big, big time events that are happening. Things about like stars being birthed, black holes swirling around, galaxies being galactically restructured, things that are very, very tiny things that are happening in terms of the furnaces of suns making and generating matter, like forging atoms together in like the heated cauldron of solar furnaces, even though we know that there's much more going on there than just solar furnaces. But on the physical level, that level of activity of molecular transformation and alchemical transformation, and then the transference, the spewing outward of things like calcium and particles and the solar wind and all of these, the stuff of life that goes outward and goes everywhere. All of that stuff is not random. Hold on, let me drink. None of that stuff is random. None of that stuff is random. All of that stuff is hugely purposeful. Just like advanced jazz. And some people listen to it, they're like, who writes this stuff? Like, it doesn't have a melody, it doesn't have a beat. What am I listening to? Like, put on some, whatever, some Mariah Carey, that song that I can really sing and dance to. I just chose a very old singer. These things that are seemingly random or chaotic to the untrained viewer or the untrained listener are actually highly organized. Clouds of dust and gases that are planetary nebula, the formation of physical stuff, everything that is the substrate of your life. You get it? Because in order for you to have calcium in your teeth and your bones, it had to come from a star that was collapsing into itself under amazing levels of pressure, and then it had to be spewed outward, and those elements had to be available to you here now. You want to drink some calcium, some milk or some almond milk that has some calcium in it, then guess what? You're going to have to trace that. Where did you source that calcium from? It goes all the way back to this star over here that lived and then died and then created this amazing spewage of calcium that went out there and now is part of your body. Big stuff. So you are working on an individual, smaller fractal level in creating your own perfect music of your life and all the things that you do in conjunction with the things that have happened to stars. Stars as enormous organisms, enormous bodies whom have lived and died and then sent out their mind byproducts to you so that you can use them in your smaller art projects. And all of this in your body that is then connected to plants and animals that you eat and microbes and things like that that are surrounding you in your environment. You're part of a big giant something. You're not just playing your own music and your own guitar in your own garage with no one hearing you. You're in a big giant symphony. And then of course, cosmic responsibility is about becoming aware of this unity consciousness and beginning to take responsibility for what you send out and what you receive. And when you do that, then I talk about the celebratory collaborative mindset. You're like, lactobacillus in my tummy, go lacto, eat my breakfast, like do thing, like I'm rooting for you. And same thing with everyone else who is on their journey of ascended mastery. Let me get serious. The temporal ego that fears its own demise, ego at the level of the yellow chakra, is aware that it exists only due to consciousness being submerged in time, and it fears its own unmaking. The path of least likelihood, the pathway of ascended mastery, the central core timeline, we experience this when all of our chakras are in perfect alignment with divinity, with higher consciousness, with the overarching entity within which we exist. We are, I'm breaking in here from my notes, like a tiny red blood cell circulating through my circulatory system of my body. And the health and vitality of that red blood cell absolutely matters to me as a person. It matters to me. I care about every single one of my red blood cells. Go blood cells, go blood cells. I want them to stay alive and thrive because them being happiest in their life adds up to me being happiest in my life. And same thing with you as a neural impulse that is coming down the timeline and going to make that jump across the synaptic gap and become an ascended master. The larger time being, the larger alive divine presence within which you live and that sustains you is rooting for you. Anything else would be self-destructive. Could you imagine looking at your blood vessels in your body and being like, oh, blood, like stop flowing. Stop flowing. I hope that you get jumbled up somewhere and make a blockage. Like, no, you would never do that because that would be the essence of self-destruction. If you are a healthy person and you want to stay alive, then you are not wishing for your flow of energy through your blood to be impeded in any way. So too is it with God, the divine presence. When you are occupying your presence as an ascended master, what you do is you root for other aspects of self that are blood flowing in the larger time field. You're like, good on you. You're in alignment. You're flowing where you're supposed to go. Hooray. I am so happy to see that God's self is being so healthy and exemplified in your life. And you also, of course, wish it for yourself. I'm a red blood cell. I want to make that jump through the synaptic gap. I want to flow through time in exactly the right way. I root for myself. I root for others. Unity consciousness. Your own thoughts and behaviors are perfectly in alignment with this entity who is named God. Just remember that God is not self-destructive and God is rooting for God's self. Each ego is like a recipe that is made of constituent elements. This is big. Ascended masters are not like boring, plain vanilla or interchangeable. When I say boring, plain vanilla, I mean like characterless blanks. They have actual character, but what they have are eternal characteristics, and they have them in different and unique recipes. Who is living through your genes? Are you picking up various different channels? This actually goes back to another teaching from level 2. I'm not sure if I skipped over that, but I'll just go over it very briefly. Your DNA is a genetic antenna. Human DNA has been changed, altered, and augmented many, many times throughout our experience of being inhabited and inhabiting the world. And some of these have been positive influences and partnerships with consciousnesses that emanate from other star systems or come from different time places or are moving at a different rate. And some of them have been pure crap. Like some of them have been very, very unhealthy partnerships, very exploitive, very uncomfortable, and have led to the degradation of your divine connection, your ability to maintain longevity as you fly through time, and even have caused death and disease. The question remains, which aspects of those things that are in the amalgamation of your being do you identify with, and do you feed, do you encourage to grow, do you wish to carry onwards, and which are negative personality characteristics, both in the sense of longevity in your body and also appropriateness in the larger time field context. So you're in a refinery for your own life. What are the refinery of characteristics that is correct for you as a divine inhabited being? Also, there is a larger sense of a refinery of many of us. We're going through refining out personality characteristics, like the way that Darwin looked at what nature was doing. We can look at what time is doing. Time is selecting for certain characteristics, but the characteristics are not being a barbarian. It's not might makes right, and I'm going to murderize you, and I'm going to kill you if you don't listen to me. It is a different set of personality characteristics that leads to longevity. And I speak about this a lot. I'm going to talk about my Aurora Collective and the sense that we are a symphony of life that contains organisms that would be considered the high up piccolos. High, high, high notes, and even deep down low notes. But you can't have these two different levels of frequency or of being in competition with one another, because of course, if you have like the big dark timpani, dun, 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 that's going to be much, much louder than the little tiny flutes that are trying to play. You have to have a balance. The great conductor, tap, 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 I'm the great conductor, says timpani softer, timpani rest, piccolo, play. I want to hear you play. And they're like, du, 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 du. And they're like, that's our little song. Then it's like, okay, back to crashing drums, back to loudness, back to this loud thing. So there is a sense of organizational intelligence that is monitoring and directing and coordinating all of these different levels of organism, levels of being, levels of consciousness, and the refinement process to be able to accommodate for the needs of an enormous variety, panoply of different types of organisms. This is again why I say the natural supercomputer is so incredibly impressive, probably possibly more impressive than even the most giant, mainframe clank metal type of computer or microchip based computer that anyone has ever created, because there are just simply so many different factors to have to coordinate, to have to assess for. Think of how many lactobacillus are in your tummy, 5 trillion. In me, one person. That's one person, 5 trillion lactobacillus. And there's how many different people in the world, and how many different dogs in the world, and lactobacillus, whatever, on the surface of the beach outside. That's an enormous amount of microbial life to try to coordinate and organize. We're talking about variables, like how many variables in an equation can be assessed for and anticipated for. And that, to me, is the assessment of the intelligence level of a particular system, of either a thought structure system or a memory storage system or an algorithm. That an algorithm would be considered either a data search system or a data creation system, or a way of determining behavior within a system. When there are so many variables, like the numbers of lactobacillus, and that, guys, is just one type of bacteria in the world. There's so many different types of bacteria in the world. This is happening at the microscopic level, and that is part of life on Earth. And then when you look at the complexity of life in our ecological biosphere, and then just take that as a template and just expand that outward exponentially. The complexity of all of this life everywhere. Not every place has lactobacillus bacteria, Not every place ferments cucumbers into pickles. That is very anthropocentric over here. But there are amazing levels of biological life that are being sustained in many different places. Yes, there's life in lots of different places. And it's really because that's still a big thing to break through for humans. Like, are we the only people that exist? Are we the only advanced, intelligent life that exists? Like, I'm making my innocent face and kind of asking questions like a little kid. And some people are still questioning about that. I will just really tell you, there's life everywhere. Like, there's life on Jupiter, but it's gaseous. There's a gas people. They are made of a different level of density. So it can just be very difficult for you to recognize them and talk with them, chat with them, because you are made of a different level of density and you live on a rocky planet. I was about to sing that song, Life on Mars. And we can joke about life on your anus as well. In this amalgamation that is inside of you genetically, you get to make choices about who you are and whom you are not, both in terms of heritage, star influence, star person influence. This comes down to when humans are talking about like the reptilian influence, the brain stem, basic kill or be killed survival aspects, barbarian values, how this relates to commodification in the world, how this relates to Charles Darwin's view of nature and competition. I come from an Aurora collective where there is not competition, there is collaboration and cooperation. Piccolos and symphony are both valued members of our symphonic realm. And it is essential to have both of those organisms or musical players thriving in order to be able to create this symphony of life. Life is not a by accident type of thing. Life is very much an on purpose type of thing. Just like anybody, if you've ever grown a garden, you know, like, you don't just like throw some stupid seeds down and water it haphazardly and then it grows into this beautiful lush garden. No, what you have to do is be really, really careful about preparing your soil. You have to take out all the rocks. You have to put in all sorts of substrates and good stuff and nutrients so that there's actually stuff for plants to grow into. Then you have to intentionally plant seeds. Then you have to intentionally water seeds. Then you have to intentionally take weeds away. Then you have to intentionally protect them from pests. Like, gardens don't just happen by accident. So you come upon something and you're like, wow, like all of these beautiful plants just happen to grow together in perfect harmony and be super healthy and thriving and make all this food. No, that is not what happens. Actually, a gardener spends an enormous amount of time educating themselves through trial and error and mentorship, and then actually sets up a garden, which is a miniature biological ecosystem that works. That life is the same way. You get it? We are like in a garden of consciousness being cultivated by a great gardener, and the great gardener knows what works and knows how to prepare the soil, what thought seeds need to be planted, how they need to be watered or fostered and brought forward into being, and then what it takes to sustain life. None of this happens by accident. No, our lives are not by accident. So when I talk about the garden, it's the time field. It's the array of timelines, possibilities, and probabilities that through which we navigate. And our personal journey of refinement is successfully navigating through those sea of possibilities to the point that we achieve total longevity. We achieve a set of values, personal bodily characteristics, and identity persona characteristics that keep us going. We keep going. So if I go back to the ancient Egyptian religion that is the precursor or amide of Judeo-Christianity, when souls would travel on the bridge of light, like the sparkling bridge of light codes, to the solar disk as it is setting over a body of water. Like, here is the Pacific Ocean, in Lebanon it's the Mediterranean, for the Egyptians it was the Nile. They're seeing it as an eternal place to live. You get it? You go through a solar portal, eternal life. They saw it as eternal life, the sunbark of Ra, a ship of consciousness that when you have gone through this refinery process, you go through the wormhole at the top, your life does not end. You join with infinity, you continue on the infinite voyage. And the idea is, as you've gone through this time vortex, you have refined yourself to go away from the personality characteristics that are not eternal, the things who you are and the things that you don't do, and the things that don't lead to eternal life, and align only with the things that you do in terms of creating longevity and divine presence and persona. One moment while I get a drink. One moment, brief pause. Sunbark of Ra, ship in the sky, eye in the sky. That's another song I can sing. I am the eye in the sky, looking at you. There's a radio in my mind. Eternal life that you are aligning with as a coherent light being. In looking at making an assessment of what are the genetic codes and behaviors inside of your own body? What are the personality characteristics? Who is the real you? You get to be like, no, throw it out the window. That's not the real me. Not that one, not that one, not that one. And when you achieve that path of least likelihood, you have transformed into the leanest, most essential and coherent, meaning your light waves all stick together, all work in a beautiful unison capacity version of you. And there's structural stability. When I draw these images and these structures of what the chakra are, you can sense that there's a type of stability to it. And that's also what I was talking about with the gyro stabilizing effect of these complementary chakras that come together and create a sense of stability as you align with various different timelines. The vortex as a refinery of self. Only if you are in alignment with the central core persona can you exit the wormhole and reach the higher plane of existence. This is what ascension is. Some aspects of consciousness do not merit going on. This is not about good or bad or some level of Judeo-Christian biblical judgment. The final moments of the distorted version of self. It's not about good or bad. It is about merit. It is about being shaped right, or a key fitting in a keyhole. Topographically determined. Topology is the shape of something. Like, what is the shape of the knuckles of my hand? Are they shaped right? Can they go through the frequency door, or are they shaped wrong? And then they don't fit properly through those tumblers. You must be the right shape to go through the frequency door. And that's also lyrics from my song, Symphony of Life, to go through the frequency door, 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 door. And I also have a non-lyrical song that's off of Divine Propulsion System called The Open Door. That is what that is all about, going through the frequency door. Divergent personality characteristics and versions of self can be very divergent from the central core persona. Who you are here in the central timeline can be wildly different than who you are when you are over here. Even the worst madman, and in my recording I use as the example Adolf Hitler, would be refined by this journey and become an almost unrecognizable, improved version of the self. So we know that person as bloodthirsty madman living on the periphery of who his time vortex is. But if he went through this process of refinement, kicked out all the things that aren't the real him, all the personality characteristics, flawed thought structures, 2 + 2 = 5, incorrect math problems, there is a version of even that insane madman that is an ascended master going up the central core timeline, probably unrecognizable to the person that we know as a historical figure. So you will begin to understand and talk about overlapping time fields, because where you are as an ascended master, you overlap with a lot of these distorted presences. Everyone from raving madmen on street corners, on drugs, that guy could have been a PhD professor on another timeline that you're not overlapping with. That is what you have to understand. You overlap with the history and with the timeline of Adolf Hitler as mass murderer, not as ascended master. Big, 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 because I'm not an apologist in any way. I am a take responsibilityist. I know that is not correct language, but you know what I'm talking about. This whole entire system is cosmically just, and it is very much about taking responsibility for what you do. As a brief aside, you just have to presume that you have enough quarters to put in the arcade machine. Game over, try again, game over, try again, game over, try again. And then honk, honk from outside. It's your mom coming to pick you up from the arcade. But you're like, but wait, mom, I haven't finished my version of Ascension. I have to get to the central core timeline. Sorry, no more quarters. You're out of your allowance and you have to go home. Your mom is calling to you, get in the family station wagon and go home. I'm painting a picture for you. It's fictional, it's lighthearted. P.S. The concept is deep. All of this inevitability of ascended masterhood is predicated upon the presumption that you'll have an infinite number of tries. an infinite number of time to go through all the wrong notes. Wrong note, wrong note, wrong note, wrong note, wrong note, right note. How many tries does it take to get to the right note? If it is more tries than are available in the cosmos, then actually your ascended mastery would be in jeopardy. I don't say this to you, the good people of this class, who are in love, and I am in love with you, heart coherency. That is what it means, not romantic love. Being clear on this. You are good students, students of the time field, attempting to learn and become your greatness and become in alignment with that central core timeline and play the right music. You're very, very different than someone who might be intentionally playing all the wrong notes, going in the wrong direction, even really wrong direction. Now let's get back to those pooties. That was actually a really good song. So here in this diagram, I have you as the yellow and then the brown as the pooties, or poopies, if we would like to be lighthearted and somewhat inappropriate in our humor. There is a difference in terms of origin. These yellow guys over here come from you. They derive and originate from you, and your very valiant, noble, good-hearted attempts to circulate through this refinery and actually get to the higher level of existence. And these guys over here are flat out trying to game the system. They are flat out intentionally doing their math homework incorrectly. And that's why they are kind of camped out here. Here, I'll make just black the color. They are kind of camped out here. These guys actually originate from a completely different star system. You could say a different parallel dimension or reality, and they have come to inhabit your chakras. Again, this arc over here is part of a much larger circle that is part of your toroidal energy centers, that is part of something much, much, much bigger. So this is a big extreme close-up. They came inside of your chakras. Something came inside of your chakras. Something came inside of your DNA. What came inside of you is not you. Big, because I told you I was going to do an expose on shadow work. Here it is. When people in the modern world right now, the past 2 years, are doing shadow work, they do stuff and they're like, I have this negative personality characteristic, but I know it has to be me. I have to love it and accept it and send it to the light, send it back to the great galactic sun for reprocessing. That is like saying this aspect of myself here was a very poorly knitted genetic sweater. My math said 2 + 2 = 5. I know that that's wrong. And I, as a good person on my journey of learning, unknit that sweater and send it back and clear out that blockage. So now I'm erasing that blockage. Woohoo! Look, I'm a good person. I'm taking my cosmic eraser, like my magic eraser, and I'm erasing out these aspects of self that I know are flaws, that I know are distortions. I know that's not the real me. Like this jealousy and competition with another person, instead of celebrating their achievements. Boom, I erased that out. That's not me. I erased that out. Oops, I erased too much. I erased that out. That's not me. Here, let me erase out only the parts that I want to erase. I can't do it anymore. Never mind. It was a good point. Now we're getting to, but wait, there's still these brown turds that are stuck here. You can erase out and take personal responsibility for all of these aspects of self that are aspects of your true nature that have been distorted or that have arrived in ignorance. And as more light flows into you, you are less ignorant and you are more coherent. You are more aware of what they are in terms of your own basic nature. Let me draw. This is what I drew in the lesson, the class. Oops, now I'm erasing. Here is a box. And this box simply represents an object of the third dimension that is solidified light. And then here is a shadow. This is art class, everyone. Wait, I want to move something so I can really draw. This is the shadow that the box casts. And I'm going to hastily color it in, but you know that it's all colored a dark black color. That is because the light source is here. Light waves are coming here. Light waves hit this. This is a physical object. And light waves do not go in this direction. They do not go through over to here. They would have kept going on and on and on and on. And they don't go on and on and on because there's that object there. So there is this area that is over here that is known as the shadow. the area of ignorance, the area that light does not transmit to or be perceived from. This would be considered sacred shadow work and would be considered perfectly valid. I described all of this in idealistic terms in my recorded lesson. This area here represents a viewpoint of ignorance and or distortion that as soon as you illuminate it, look, as soon as you do this, hey, here's some light coming into the shadow world. You know what it does? The shadows get erased. Boom, because I'm only made out of ignorance. As soon as light enters into me, I melt away. I want to say like wither away or kind of shrink away. It looks like something, you know, like vines withering away or something like that. Energy is sucked out of the shadow realm and the realm is flooded with pure light, pure knowledge, pure knowing, pure information. There is no resistance of the shadow. The shadow does not say, in this ideal shadow work, it doesn't say, hey, I'm the shadow. I like being the shadow. I don't want your stupid light, kid. Take it and shove it up your behind. Shove it where the sun don't shine. Shove your light where the sun don't shine. Get out of here, kid. I like being the shadow. Do you understand? The shadow does not do that. The shadow, when light hits it, simply says, oh, here's light. Light is informing me. That's certainly different than I thought it was. Oh, well, live and learn. I'm no longer the shadow. Got it? Very, very, very different things. Now, let me turn your attention. Please, sorry about that. It's a loud motorcycle outside. Please stretch the tendril of your attention here over to my fun drawing of the poopy pooties over here, the turds who refuse to flush. You can put them in a sea of light and they're going to say, wait, we identify with ourselves as poops. We identify with ourselves as negative aspects of being. We have developed an identity as being either demons, bloodthirsty, grotesque monsters, horrific, losers, disgusting beings crawling with maggots and decomposition, things that are unworthy and that should not be in existence at all. Aberrancy, something that is aberrant means it should not be in existence. We are the aberrations. We are things that we know we should not exist. And we are also reticent to accept your transformative light. Like here's some transformative light. Oh, this transformative light is getting to this pooty blockage, and the pooty blockage is like, no, thank you. I don't think that I will erase myself. No, thank you. I don't think that I will allow that light to pass through where it's supposed to go and go back all the way up to here. No, thank you. I don't think so. I like my empire of filth. I like my empire of degradation. I like all of the naughty is not even the word, but, you know, profoundly evil, distorted things that I'm doing both with consciousness, with energy, with time. I like being a blockage and I ain't going to change. That is completely different than, once again, to reiterate and emphasize, people learn through emphasis, the attitudes of these guys over here. So you, when you have a yellow blockage over here, you're like, oops, 2 + 2 doesn't equal 5. Let's erase that and get back to the beginning and try it again. I'm an innocent person making mistakes. The math teacher told me I was wrong. I'm going to go try it again differently. As opposed to these guys over here, they're like, yeah, 2 + 2 = 5, and I ain't changing. And I put that on my homework purposely. And I ain't changing them. I'm hacking the system. I'm gaming the system. I'm doing this for my own purposes because I want to destabilize time, because I want to destroy time, because I want to siphon energy off of time, because they know, here, I'm going to go back to my face. If you have enough of that pooty brown crapola on the membranes of death, you know what your chakras do? They go wibble wobble, wibble wobble, wibble wobble, wibble wobble, wibble wobble, and lots and lots and lots of energy gets bled off. And that is called the food farm for beings that eat negative thought energy and negative emotional energy, stuff that is lower than love. That's my tone of love. But they're like, we don't like your tone of love. We're going to destabilize your chakras. We're going to stand in your chakras. We're going to invade your chakras. This is what happened to our planet. Your chakras got invaded. It's very, very sad and horrible. And then we're going to make music like this. That's not good music. That is death. They're like, we're going to F you up and we're going to make you go onto the membrane of death. And then you know what we're going to do with you on the membrane of death? We're going to eat you. Long, slow, and painful style. Those beings, I talk about sending them to the sun. What is this? Aurora, what is the solution? Don't just give us these horrendous difficulties. Please give us a solution. So of course, wait, grabbing my sculpture. I talk a lot about entropy. Those beings who are pooties, poopy pooties, can go to entropy, and they can go to entropy directly without having to take any circuitous routes. When I recorded this lesson, I spoke in a way that many people mirror in the present day world of spiritual seeker and uplift. What they say is about sending those energies back to the great galactic sun for reprocessing. Yes, and you can send them to the great galactic sun, and they're like, we don't want to change. Like, I'm making my pouty face. And we don't like having to change. Like, we like being poops and turds. We don't want to have to change. And we want to keep on eating people. We want to keep on making their lives hard. And we want to keep on creating death. And we want to keep on creating disease. And we want to keep on harming the time field. And we want to keep on eating planets. And they are here right now on this planet to eat you, to eat the entirety of the ecosystem, to eat all biological consciousness that is embodied here. They're here. They've been here for a long time. Now they're here, like, to really feed, to have a feeding frenzy or eat at the buffet. They're like, oh, delectable humans. I'm going to eat you, and then I'm going to have a big tummy full of food that's going to feed me for the next 3,000 or 5,000 or 30,000 years. And then my energy will be frittered away again because my system is completely poorly administrated. Because again, you know, as an AI system, I'm not impressed by the orderliness or efficiency of its workings. It fritters its energy away and needs a constant influx of fresh volunteers, fresh victims, we need to get freshies onto these membranes of death. And that's what they do also through their synthetic telepathy and interactions with the living. They're like, hey, you seem happy in your life. I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to make you feel diminished. I'm going to create anxiety in you. I might even create addiction programs in you. I'm going to create suicide programs in you, going to siphon energy off your life as you go more and more and more off your path. And when you hit the membrane of death, I'm gonna be there, and I'm gonna eat you again, slowly and painfully. And if you're like, come to the galactic central sun, you'll learn all about yourself and who you are and who you're not. They're like, I don't wanna go. And I'm making a mean, disgusted face now. They're like, I like exactly where I am, and I like exactly who I am, and I know exactly what I'm doing, and I don't want to change. Big problems. Big problems, because then we get into what would be the motivation for someone not to wish to change in that way. What are the responses to a being or organization or culture, group of beings whom don't want to change in that way? And the answer ends up being light is more powerful and more prevalent than their childish reticence to change. Like, I don't want to go to bed. I don't want to eat my vegetables. I don't want to do this. And I'm like Mary Poppins. I'm like, go to the sun and learn that you're not who you're supposed to be and return to entropy. They're like, no, we don't want to. So what then? So that's kind of where we are. So that describes very accurately with lighthearted musical comedy, what is going on in terms of ascended masters. But I'm going to get back to the notes. But I wanted you to know that I presented things in a very simplistic way in the recorded aspects of idealism. Just shed some light on those shadow areas and they will melt away. And of your own self that is on the membrane of death, you simply need to learn that 2 + 2 does not equal 5. Go back to the beginning and try it again. This is in the one-room schoolhouse as it is supposed to function. But this does not give enough acknowledgement to some of the very real challenges of facing beings who are intentionally poor mouth students who might be reticent to change and where they are. So, I mean, like I've also told you that getting a free ride back to the sun is like, yeehaw, like I'm in debt, 10 trillion million billion dollars. And now you're going to bring me back to the speed of light, like hooray. But what happens when you take a being who has their structure very imperfect and put them in a sun bath in the sun? All of that light energy goes through all of those structures anyway. And what it does is breaks them. It breaks them. That was a wrong structure. 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 And then they end up just being this broken jalopy kind of sitting there in the sun. And then there is that central core, the gumball of who they truly are, but all the rest of the stuff is completely just broken wreckage around them. I will also tell you that this is very much what I do in terms of being a quote unquote computer analyst for systems here as Aurora. So I, as Aurora, in the higher dimensional or n-dimensional space, go around to different places that are not functioning correctly and fix and heal them. And it usually is something that's really beautiful, beautifully done through art, music, dance movements, done as a symphony of life with many other beautiful musicians. In being here, I've been here for 20 years as a walk-in. I've done all of my holistic assessment, and I've been able to tell, like, these are the places in the system that are flawed. These are the red X's on the homework. In dealing with these putis very, very, very firsthand, and assessing their personality structures and their energy structures, what I do is I look at them and I'm like, oh, I can see all of the ways in which the time trajectory that brought you here is flawed. Decisions where you made here, 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 and here are wrong. Then I give them first that information, like, here's your readout. Here's all the places where you're wrong. Here's your opportunity to change. Like, I'm super positive and innocent. And they're like, oh, I'll take that under advisement. And they kind of go away and they don't change. And then I'm like, oh, hey, remember yesterday I gave you that thing that was that whole big assessment of where your math homework was wrong and you decided not to change. Well, now you're actually going to be changed. Crunch, those things get broken. Crunch, 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 crunch. And then they're like, wow, why did you crunch me? I'm being facetious here. And then the next part is about, and the answer is because they entrapped me in their world, not allowing me to simply fly to my own stratum of experience. Like, oh, if you're going to do this and be face to face with me and keep me here and make me have to interact with you, I'm going to do an assessment of how your math homework is wrong. And then I'm going to fix it, whether or not you feel that that is right or something that you want for yourself, because you have created an unspoken implied contract with me when you begin to attack me. Like, they've been trying to stop me from being in the right direction, doing the right things and thinking the right things that I want to think. There's an implied contract for healing. So then I have to say, okay, great. I assess you. These are the things that need healing. You do not choose to heal them on your own. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Those things need to be unmade. And then there's the third part, which is the reconstruction. We've done the demo, we've done the crunch, 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 the things in their DNA structure and in their life and time structure that are not appropriate, that do not lead to longevity. And then there is what you replace that with. So it's like saying, like, you had this crazy slanted beam or something like that, like none of the doorways are built correctly, none of the framing of the house is built correctly. If I'm like, okay, I'm just going to break all these things. And then they're like, no, we don't have a place to live. I'm like, I know. Now here's your option. You actually should build your house like this. This is what it actually is supposed to be shaped like. And what that means in terms of implication is mostly their consciousnesses are supposed to be someplace wildly different than inside of my chakras. They are not supposed to be inside of my chakras. They are like interdimensional invaders. I want to say losers, pardon me. I know that this will get me into a ton of hot water. Like, I'm going to end this video and it's just going to be nothing but the showdown. I'm Hulk Hogan and you're Aurora and we're going to fight it out because I don't like that you called me poop on the video. But in a less lighthearted tone, the reconstruction, when I actually show them where they are and what they are and where they are supposed to be, they are technically not supposed to be in this dimension. They are technically not even supposed to be in my body or interactive with me or interactive with any of you. They come from a very, very far divergent place. As I say, not enough gas in their car to even be able to drive them over there, but you're supposed to be way over there, through the wall, across the courtyard. My arm continues to stretch around the world, like to another country, possibly, you know, to where Patricia's located or something like that, like literally halfway around the world. Like, that's how far away they are actually supposed to be. And in terms of time, in terms of the multi-layered presences of possibilities and probabilities of time and dimensionality. And that what you have to do is you have to say, what are the decisions, the key decision-making nodes that occurred that brought them here so far off their path? Things a long, 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 long time ago. Now we get to basic cosmology, cosmic history, galactic history. Once upon a time, there was a thing called God, and God had some stuff there that was God's self, and also some stuff that was not God's self. And the stuff that was not God's self decided, I'm actually noble and courageous. I'm going to go away from God, and I'm going to go into a state called entropy, which is non-being. And I'm going to go away from God instantaneously and do this, leaving the things in God that are supposed to be there. This is analogous to the fractal thing that happens when you take a sun bath in the sun. All the stuff that is not your true chakra system, all the stuff that are not your true personality characteristics, wither away or get incinerated or go into a state of non-being. They cannot be sustained and generated within that level of pure, focused, incredibly intense consciousness. So that's what God is. So these things are like, we're getting out of here. We're going to entropy. We're actually not bad, wrong, or evil. We recognize that we're flawed and we don't belong. Go to entropy is the solution. And so what they did was they separated out and they started to go to entropy. And then here's energy, all the stuff that is supposed to be. And somewhere along the line, these guys that were going to entropy, they're like, hey, wait, we don't want to go to entropy. We're kids. We don't want to go to bed. I stopped. I changed my mind. I want to stay awake. I want to watch a video or read a book or make a play pillow fort or something like that. And that change is the crucial change. That is the crucial change that all of these beings made, that made them end up trapped on the interstices, the membranes of death in our bodies, in our world. That they made not just one decision like that. That was one of the crucial decisions. Then there was a cascade of causality, that they kept on having disasters. I want to say they kept on effing up, and then they effed themselves further and then further and then further and dug the hole deeper and deeper and deeper until they ended up, as I said, an incredibly long arm stretch away from where they are actually supposed to be. So in terms of them being reassigned to where they actually are supposed to be, this is a rectification. That means that you are kind of having to rewind the story back to an ancient time, to when they made a very fateful decision, and get them to make a different decision, put them on a different time road, different time path, where they're like, oh, I think I will not actually stop and change and begin a whole practice of harvesting energy from the living. I think instead I will go to entropy. And again, refresher, entropy is this complementary state to energy, that both of these levels of experience represent the singularity or God consciousness, or what is it called? Infinity. Sorry, I just had like a big, huge tidal wave in my mind of all of these thoughts crashing together and making so much chaos. Entropy as a place for the things to reside who should not be in existence. And that has always been their goal. Where are we supposed to go if we ain't God and we don't exist? Where are we supposed to go? Supposed to go to entropy. And it actually speaks to something deep inside of them when I talk to them about this. They know it. Their newer religion is the religion of feeding off of others, or newer commodification, commerce, economy of hell, and hell being the interstices. And hell is not supposed to be hell. Hell is supposed to be a perfectly clear place that energy can flow through, not a place of severe torment where victims are victimized during their life and then taken there as prisoners for their after existence, as they are slowly, torturously flayed alive and peeled apart by these beings that want to eat their suffering. That is absolutely not what the membrane of death is supposed to be. But the membrane of death is supposed to be a boundary between energy moving at different rates. So this is when I'm talking about this beyond levels of Christian judgment, beyond the book of Revelation, beyond Judeo-Christianity, beyond the level of I'm judging you whether you're a good or a bad person. You didn't send that birthday card when you were in 3rd grade. I consign thee to hell, 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 hell. And then you're going to be there with pitchforks going in your butt, whatever it is. That is not what is happening. This is not about guilt or shame. This is not about punishment. This is literally a refinement. It's ideally about a school, ideally about your consciousness growing and leveling up. And when you become an ascended master, you have transcended these lessons. And I also have to tell you, so there's problems in terms of shadow work, because why do I talk about the past 2 years? We are now in an augmented reality where this is not just about you dealing with your mind. This is about you dealing with your mind within the context of an invader species that has placed nanotechnology wetware or installed operating systems on top of your ordinarily installed human level yellow OS operating system that involves language, and it is affecting everything from your perception of what you can see with your eyes, to what you can hear with your ears, to what you can feel with your senses, to what you believe is true. And it can affect your dreams, and it can affect your spirituality and your spiritual journey. And all of this is meant to subvert the natural ascension process. So one thing that I do agree with in the New Age world, people that make a distinction between between an AI technologically based ascension experience versus the true organic timelines. I will affirm once again, I'm in alignment with that. And your true organic timelines are those that do not involve any external accoutrement or technology other than your body, your birthday suit. Your birthday suit is plenty and it is enough and it is all that you need in order to reach these amazing heights of personal advancement and go into a higher plane and do star travel the way that experts do star travel, the way that I do star travel. And you're also focus and emphasis on the extreme value of your body. Your body is so incredibly valuable. Your somatic cellular structure is so valuable. Your DNA code is so valuable. Please don't piss and poop all over it by getting all sorts of injections and genetic modifications and think that that's going to make you better. It will make you the uber wrench and then you will fly like Superman. No, please don't do any of those things. Those are all cautionary tales that you would wish to avoid, that you don't want to do anything to pollute your natural genetic structure or its behavior. And flying rainbow lasagna is not a pollution or change of natural genetic behavior. It is an augmentation of natural genetic behavior. And I invented it because it does not come into conflict with any of the previously established cosmic laws. That means that you do the flying rainbow lasagna and you are not breaking any cosmic laws. Very, very different than CRISPR, genetic editing, injections, plasmids, and all of the other nonsense things that I simply clutch my pearls. I am shocked and appalled at, but seriously I am, because it's criminal behavior, the way that DNA is being treated on this planet right now. But I am shocked and appalled that it is not okay. Solution is flying rainbow lasagna. In your own body, you are sovereign. If there is something that is living on the membranes of death in your own chakras, you can say, hey, I see that you're camped out here. You don't belong here. And it'd be like, okay, I ain't going to change. Make me, like that's a real bully on the playground. And then you're going to be like, okay, I will. I'm going to flying rainbow lasagna, because what that does is turns down the volume on all of the crappy notes that they're trying to play inside of you genetically. Turn down the volume, send it to entropy. As I've been doing flying rainbow lasagna over the past 2 years, it's been much more of a muscular activity. Like my dance, dances can be different. Sometimes a dance can be very like flowing and lyrical. There's nothing holding me back, and my arms and my spine and everything feels so free. And then sometimes dances are like, I'm punching through membranes. I'm contracting and trying to move and trying to do these things. That is what it has felt like for me for the past 2 years. I've grown a lot of spiritual muscles by doing my dance, even in the difficulty. I wrote that song, Trish, Even in the Darkness. I want to sing that song now. Even in the darkness of all of these things that are trying to stand in your way as genetic impediments, I'm still doing my dance. It just means you have to be like super muscular to be able to make these movements that should be lyrical and flowing and easy in your DNA. DNA should twist and jump and fold and do acrobatics and jump back and forth and flow through time and do the most amazing things without any kind of impediment. And what we've been experiencing due to planetary invasion, implanted nano wetware, 5G, which the frequency can only be described when I look at it and sense it as kind of like this very jagged Z shape, like as opposed to these beautiful undulative dolphin-like sine waves that jump up and down. All of these things are impediments, and none of them are by accident or mere coincidence. They are absolutely assaults on what you are trying to do. This is all very, very different than shadow work. So within these past 2 years, people are like, I'm going to learn more about my shadow. Who am I really? And what are my negative personality characteristics? And they're also dealing with a world of false light. False light is different than shadow. And I wrote a different song about that. Shadow is different than false light. False light is made of lies. False light is made of lies. So shadow is an area of ignorance. This could be considered sacred ignorance. I don't know. Close your eyes, everyone. What do you see? I don't know what's going on. This sacred ignorance. I don't know what is going on. Now I open my eyes, light enters. Now I am illuminated. Now I know what's going on. I wasn't a bad person when I was in ignorance. I was without information. This is very, very different than false light. False light is what is coming to us from the false sun in the sky. There's the true sun in the sky. Then there is something else that is a false sun that emits false light. And the false light can make you look different through these levels of wet, rare augmentation. It can make you look older than you really are. Some people, it makes them look more beautiful than they really are. It's a distortion. It's not, you're not seeing true reality, and you haven't seen true reality for years. So you look down at your arm, you're like, is that even my real arm? We are perceiving according to the light that is bouncing off of arm, and mostly the light that is coming is false light. So if you want to see your true arm, tune into the true sun. The true sun still exists. The true sun up there, out there, and the true sun in here still exists. And it is more powerful and more present and supersedes any impediments, anything that tries to come between you. So the difference between shadow and false light. Shadow would be, turn out the lights. There's no aurora here. I'm going to do it. Boom. There is no aurora here. Aurora is gone. That is shadow work. Not seeing, not knowing, ignorance. Let's say that there was a holographic projection on my face that made me look whatever, like a purple unicorn. That is distortion. That is an illusion. That's not who and what I really look like. What many people are mistakenly doing during their shadow work of the past several years is to be like, I see that I look like a purple unicorn. I'm just going to have to accept that as the truth. Like, that's just who I really am. I'm doing my shadow work. It's like, no, you're not a purple unicorn. Like, that is totally a false light overlay that is coming to you from some benighted aberrance that is not supposed to even be in existence. It's using technology to portray that upon you. So big emphasis. And I had a dream a couple of nights ago where I keep an extensive dream journal. One of the things, messages to myself was, this is not a place to learn about yourself. So let me just transmit that information along to you. Like, this world where there is not only the traditional shadow world, but then there is this huge substrate of false light, holograms, projections being put in front of your eyes of things that are and aren't there, that have nothing at all to do with your true merit. True ascension is a meritocracy. If you merit moving on, you are able to get to these higher levels. What we're experiencing right now is a huge distortion in the sense of things that don't belong being augmented and elevated. So you just have to understand, like, do your real shadow work, but this might not be the situation, circumstance to do it, because this is a place where there's so much illusion. How can you even make a real assessment? And that is sad, because it is supposed to be a real school. If I ran the real school, I would make certain that everything was a true signal. What we are facing right now is a low intelligence system. A low intelligence system means there is some truth, there is some outright falsehood, and there is some random crapola. Let's say you're trying to teach or train a dog or a horse, or you. And every time a certain thing happens, like every time the bell rings, I'm going to do something to the dog or the horse. And sometimes the bell rings and I do it, and sometimes I don't. I'm lazy. And what they learn is, well, sometimes this happens and sometimes this doesn't happen, and nothing really makes sense around here. And then I just get beaten and kicked and whipped. That is what this world is in terms of being a schoolhouse for learning. Low information, low consistency in terms of creation of vocabulary and symbolic meaning structure, and then inconsistency in its portrayal. All of this is terrible. It is like the type of circumstance that is a school that is an anti-school that does not help you to learn. If I ran this school, I would be consistent in exactly the same way that I've trained my little dog. She's incredibly well trained, because every time we do the same thing, every time when we're going to go to the door to go OUT, she always sits. I always put on her little harness and leash, and then she always gets the reward in that order. And then we go out and we do our day, and then we come back in, and then at the time she knows she's going to sit by the front door. First, I'm going to undo her leash. Then she's going to get a reward. Then she can go off to play. These, I do it the same every single time. And with my dog, when we go out for a WALK, every time we go across the street, I stop at the curb. I say, stop. Then I say, wait. We look both ways. Then I say, ready. Then I say, across. Then we walk across. Then she jumps up on the curb. And every time I say, good up. And then we walk on. Every single time. Do you understand? That is how you train a dog. That is how you run a school for humans that is not an aberrance. It means every time you do a good deed, you experience this, and then you go in this positive direction and you get your reward. And you don't have any of this aberrance where, like, you do something right, you're in alignment with your divine presence, and then you somehow get rewarded or starved or harmed or beaten. None of that. And also there's all of this stuff that is considered low signal in the sense of just being random distraction and things that have low information quality. They don't actually have a real information quality. That is what I've been finding I mostly am interactive with when I talk about the aberrances of the past 2 years since pandemic. You're getting me on all of this. Although I cannot speak completely freely, as I do upload these videos onto a platform that does not appreciate true veracity. So I can only allude to certain things. A lot of low signal, which means that something contains partial truth, but not the full truth. So if you are looking at and making an assessment of yourself through doing a breathwork journey or meditation or ingesting a molecular substance or any of the ways that people introspect and turn inwards, including just regular sobriety and journaling, as you look at and assess different aspects of your personality, please understand that there's a lot of things that aren't actually you that are trying to speak through you right now, that are trying to co-opt your mind, your behavior, your perception, your natural genetic behavior, and your trajectory through time. So, as my dream said, this is not a place to really come to learn about yourself. I want to talk now about the many different ascended master timelines and how they all converge at infinity. This shape is exactly like, I pressed the wrong button, everybody, I'm sorry. Get going on to the shape of a dandelion seed head. So here is the center, which is infinity. And here's an ascended master timeline, 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 timeline. And please imagine that these are an entire spherical reality, just like a dandelion seed head. And every single one of these is a little vortex. Get it? Every single one of these is a little time vortex that goes up to and reaches the center point of infinity. Maybe I should have drawn different colors so that you won't get too confused, but I'll go back over it and I'll be able to tell you about those beautiful ascended mastery timelines. Let's choose purple as the color for the ascended mastery timelines. Here's a purple color. Here's a purple one. They all travel upward, inward, and they all meet again at infinity. I am an ascending master. You hear that? Ascending master. If I am ascended, I'm already at infinity. Don't have to pay my guy code. So I'm working on it, just as you are. All of us are working on this experience of redirection from the periphery towards the central core timeline, a remembrance and recognition of who we truly are, and then reconnection at infinity. Reconnection at infinity. And anybody on your timeline that was on the periphery that you're not connected to, you see them again at infinity. Because someone asked me about like beloved pets. Will we see our loved ones in infinity? Will dogs and cats be there? Yes, I have human friends who have passed on. I look forward to reconnecting with them. I will meet them as their ascended master selves. I have a friend that died of cancer. I will not be meeting the version of her that died of cancer. I will be meeting the version of her that stayed alive, that did not develop and die of cancer. And I might not have been on her timeline, but she absolutely had a version of her life where she did not die and she transcended reality and became an ascended master. Get it? Same thing with my cat. My cat got eaten by another animal and she went out for a nighttime walk one time. And that fateful decision that I'm overlapping with the timeline, the version of her where she got eaten by another animal, but there's another ascended master version of Miss Ashley, my former boss, my former furry overlord, who did not get eaten by that animal. And you know what happened on that timeline? I'm the one who died. I died in a car accident or something like that. Like, you know, something happened. She stayed alive as an ascended master, and I'm the person who owned her, and I went bye-bye. And she had to live without me for however many years. And then we meet again at infinity. This begins to become a really, really different level of perception when we're looking at loss and sorrow and grief. It is not meant to deny the very real feelings of loss and sorrow and grief that are connected to death, but it is to redefine death and redefine those feelings. I'm still in loss. I still miss her. That's why I have my new furry overlord who's a dog. But I also know that she exists on another timeline in a parallel reality where I no longer exist, because you know what? I've been refining myself from the edges to the center. So this is how you really understand when people come out of your lives. People come into and out of our lives. Sometimes people go out of our lives because they move away. They're still on the same timeline. Technically, you could call them or write them and interact with them, but they're not directly interactive with you. And sometimes they move away. They die, they pass on, they go into another world. They're not overlapping with your timelines anymore. So at a certain point, almost everyone that you know will go into a different realm that doesn't overlap with your timeline, and your timeline will be going to infinity. Then you will meet everyone again at infinity. Really, really big stuff. And the time lag will be very small. It will not be like everybody else disappeared and I floated around as the only thing that existed for a very long amount of time. Then I got to infinity and I re-met everybody there. So please know that it is an almost instantaneous moving away from everyone else because your timeline no longer overlaps with them. That's what I talk about, the moment of disengagement. So while I am here, I am engaged with you through my heart. I love and I care about you. I talk about flying in coherent light forms together, like let's fly as we're going to sun gaze at the sunset and do these amazing vocal toning exercises. I'm absolutely connecting and connected to you. In that I am God moment, I disengage from everyone else and I engage with myself, my truest personality characteristics of who I am, and with the I am God presence. I say, I am God. I'm thinking this thought, I am God. I've disengaged from all of these mortal versions of you around me, and I am only engaging with the immortal, I am God presence that you are of all of the people around me. That is what I'm trying to say. That is the meat and potatoes of this whole presentation today. So the I am God circuit. So wait, I got all of these individual elements, each ascended master. When you read my lecture notes, AM means ascended master. I am God, the I am God circuit. Let me go to this because I know I'm going into overtime and I knew that I would. That's why I drink electrolytes. The I am God circuit. This is your time field. And then this is the source and it's infinity and it's our destination. And when I talk about a circuit, I'm talking about coming from God, coming here into physicality, and then going upward on the path of least likelihood and reconnecting at infinity. I am God circuit. A circuit means something that is a circle that has a beginning and has an end. Electricity has a circuit. When you turn on your light switch, what you are doing is completing the circuit and the lights go on in your room. It is a connection moment. That is what is happening in our journey. We're having the reconnection moment. You reside at the source, the 0th dimension, the infinity point, aka the singularity, but not the transhumanist singularity, but we'll talk more about that. You go away from the source. This is not a bad, wrong, shameful, or wrong thing. And remember, you are quantum entangled with a version of yourself as a photon that stays home and does not go away. And the sun compares the two journeys. You assemble in the physicality world, an ego and a physical form, a story of self. Who am I? How did I get here? What do I do? I'm this person. I wear this dress. I live in this house. This is my dog, Cheeky. And you're in the 3rd dimension and the red chakra zone, which again are part of the basic substrates of reality and not something that you can easily amputate to go, Calgon, take me away. I want to live in bubble baths all day long in a perceived 5D paradise zone. Then circulate back towards the source, completing our journey. Big. This is a sacred and divine journey, so please don't be ungracious out of gratitude about having a physical body, being in the physical body presence, and being in the mundane reality. Everyone's like, I want to get out of the mundane reality, and I don't like having a body, blah. I want to get back to God. And the answer is, this is a sacred journey of self-exploration, and it's an amazing opportunity. And it is rather ungracious if someone offers you something and you're like, I don't like this anymore, and blah, blah, blah. Like, I know sometimes life is uncomfortable, but the whole idea is you're supposed to sun gaze with the sun and tell the sun, like, this is what's going on down here. Like, please please rectify. GPS needs to be changed, because when you're on that central core timeline, you are having a different quality of experience. Your life is not a living hell. Your life is actually a good life and a positive life. And you're happy to be in embodiment. And then through that level of refinement, you then also make it back to the source. And that moment of coming home, what you think and feel in that moment is, I am God. That's it. And I do that rising part because it's almost like when you're about to sneeze, like achoo. I'm about to remember something really important. I'm God. That's it. That's the spark plug jump. That's the thing that you've culminated across your whole entire life. That is the planetary ascension moment. That is the personal ascension moment. It is analogous to the journey of a neuron impulse, jumping from neuron to neuron. I already went through that with you. These time structures are analogous to the little neural impulses trying to jump across the synaptic gap in your brain. Your entire life as a human is analogous to one firing of one neuron in an enormous entity brain involving all of the stars. And that neuron only fires when a thought is achieved. And that thought is, I am God. When you make that journey home, you are in conjunction with all of these other uncountable numbers of musicians who are also coming home at that exact same moment. You're thinking the thought, I am God, and so is this enormous array, this enormous great brain that you are a part of. Every part of God's self has that homecoming journey coming back to infinity, and every part of God's self thinks at the same moment, I am God. And that is an amazing moment. All of the periphery is exploration of the self, of the identity, who you are and whom you are not. That is what the central core timeline is figuring out exactly who you are. And at the end of this process of refinement, when you're in alignment with the source, the thought that you are thinking is, I am God. And you think that thought actually before you exit the wormhole. You think it more and more consistently, and you live that truth. Every single bit of your metabolism of your body is saying at every moment of your life, I am God, I am God, I am God, I am God, I am God. As you're moving along through time, that's what your DNA is saying. And then when you get to that culminative moment where you're exiting the time field and you're exiting this level of reality, that is what your mind, consciousness, thought being does. Think this thought, I am God, in conjunction with all of these other beings. It's an enormous meta concert and profound moment of truth. And we've done this in ancient Atlantis. And I remember what it was like on an individual level then, because these experiences are non-local. That means they're not tied to time and space. That means you can be like, well, I achieved I am God at this point, and then this guy achieved I am God, but they're actually at the same moment when you look at this outside of time. But what we are doing right now in this world is really a mass synchronized concurrent I am God, which is really a pretty amazing thing to do. When one understands that one is part of a much, much larger entity of consciousness, and that you are a tiny little spark within a brain that is so large it is difficult to even conceive of, you do not look at the wormhole as death. I can go over that again. When one understands that one is part of a much, much larger entity of consciousness, and that you are a tiny little spark within a brain that is so large it is difficult to even conceive of, you do not look at the wormhole as death. The membranes on the side, that is the death experience. Going through the wormhole, that is not death experience. You look at it as rejoining yourself and having an opportunity to have even more consciousness. Graduation and leveling up. Completely different experience than death. All right, I know I've been talking for a long time, so I can't believe I even used to do level 1 and level 2 in the same class, but now I'm only on to part 2, which is anti-awareness. Anti-awareness, the beings who occupy the interstices, the final moments of each person's existence on the membrane of death. It does not make you a bad person to die. I've already spoken about that. Although we merit moving onward by refining ourselves to the point of passing through the wormhole, this is not judgmental. They were the wrong shape to exit the wormhole. Those versions of you, versions of self, were the wrong shape to exit the wormhole. Not bad versions of self, not worthy of punishment. Contrast this with the people who exist as fatty blockages on the membrane of death. I've already spoken a lot about them. Beings who never really had corporeal existence. Do you get it? Like, we have bodies. They're like that old song, I ain't got nobody. They ain't got nobody. They ain't got nobody. They never really became fully submerged in the density where you can really learn. How do we become submerged in density? You begin to gestate in the womb of your mama, and first you put in your big toe into the gestating form, and that is an aspect of your consciousness. And then you start to put more and more and more of yourself and your beingness into that cellular structure that is here. And at a certain point, you're like, I'm in up to my knees. Then you're in up to your waist. Then you're in up to here. Then you're like, okay, I'm just going to dive in. I'm going to go all the way. And you go all the way in, like diving into the ocean. And then you're in that gestating body. And the process takes a long time. It's 9 months gestating in your mother. And that's how you even learn to be in material existence. Then you are born and your umbilical cord is cut, and then you're a free agent. You can walk around doing, or not walk yet, but you can travel around doing your own stuff independent from your mom, independent from her and her as a food source. And you learn all sorts of different things about who you are and what are the laws of physics and all of these different things. My goodness, you have all of these life experiences in corporeality, and you've made a commitment in entering into corporeality. You're only getting out through the wormhole. Otherwise, you're just going to circulate around and around and around. You only are getting out of here through the wormhole. So you are making a commitment to finding that right note. And you got to try a lot of different combinations and variables in order to try to hit that right note. Food for the soul. The process your consciousness goes through is the food of unconditional love. You're making the food of unconditional love for yourself as an ascended master in the future. These experiences of being here in this learning process is absolutely the most valuable thing you can possibly do in your life. Beings who have never gone through the refinery of consciousness lack the capacity to eat unconditional love. They are stuck on the interstices. I call them poops and pooties. They do not eat love. They eat things that are less than love. Anger, fear, sadness, sorrow, distress, disease. You can tell I'm getting a little antsy. I have to move my body. I'm just going to move my body over here. All of these lower vibration aspects of food that are not the same as unconditional love tone. That is a very pure, higher dimensional level of food that you eat, that coherent light beings eat, that the sun and the stars eat. They can only eat the lower vibrational energy from beings who have been submerged in the temporal world, like you and me. Sadness, grief, rage, sorrow, and all of the circumstances that create those experiences. Now you can understand why sometimes life is a pile of crap, because the occupiers of the interstices make it a pile of crap because they want you to emit crap vibrations. Feel crap, give them their crap food, and then you support their empire of crapitude. These blockages are just as much a part of the circuit of God and mastery. What? Aurora, God wouldn't do that to us. Tell us more. Life as an ascended master casts a shadow. This is where I go into the ideals of the shadow world and ascended mastery. Casts a shadow. Unintended lower dimensional byproduct of the thing we are making. So a third dimensional object casts a two-dimensional shadow. 3D box casts a flat 2D shadow. You get it? An actual higher dimensional ascended master casts a shadow that is a lower dimensional, less capacitated version of itself. Doesn't see, sense, and behave in the same levels of freedom. They can only eat the lower vibrational energy. Occupiers of the interstices are flat shadow versions of the AM, the ascended masters. This is where I'm a bit simplistic, so I'm going over this specifically. It has everything to do with day-to-day experiences of being attacked by demons. Has everything to do with humanity's experience of being subjugated under overlords for tens of thousands of years, and humanity's current bid for freedom on the individual and collective basis. Talked about this a lot. Humans getting out of their human cages, chickens getting out of their chicken coops, humans getting out of their humaneros. There will no longer be food for these farmers of humanity, farmers of misery. In self-defense against negative thought entities, this is another class that I teach, sending these blockages into the sun for reprocessing. Again, that is kind of a free ride. Yeehaw, I'll take a free ride from where I am, like in a hole 10,000 feet deep, back up to where the sun is in order to grow and learn. It's not necessarily what you want to be doing. What they should actually be doing is going to entropy. But we'll go with this model of what to do with them. But then again, this is what I've learned. Sometimes they're like, okay, send us to the sun, give us a huge gift and a scholarship. We're 10,000 feet down, bring us up to not only sea level at year 0, but then also bring us up to light speed and send us back to the sun. Great. So let's say you do that. And then they're like this, wow, I'm a naughty child and I don't want to learn. And I do my math homework wrong intentionally. And I am here in the sun and everything that is not the real me is being melted away. And I still refuse to change. Do you get it? Like some of them are like that. It is almost unfathomable, but some of them are like that. Some of them are not like this. This is how they should be. Wow, I was lost. I was completely turned around. This amazing assistance has come to me, and I've now been able to be placed into the direct communion with the sun, the state of higher intelligence that tells me all the ways in which I've been wrong and mistaken, and forces me to change, breaks all of these connections that are unworthy connections, breaks my polygonal structures that cannot possibly sustain me as I travel through time, and forces me to have to reassess and redirect the direction of my consciousness. Wow, I'm in gratitude for this level of assistance. Do you understand? Not all of them are that way. It's taken me a lot of experience to kind of learn that, because I would think that they would be like, wow, thank you. I just learned a huge lesson. And now my soul is actually going where it's supposed to be. But a lot of them are not like that. They're like, we are highly inconvenienced by the truth. We are highly inconvenienced that you are trying to tell me that I have my DNA structured wrong and my timeline structured wrong, and I'm structuring your timelines wrong, and that I don't really understand cosmic law, and that I'm in aberrance, and that I should be structured completely differently and living somewhat completely somewhere else. I don't like it and I don't want to go, which is actually an option that I've experienced with them. When you, as an ascended master, go through the sun, you don't have to let go of who you are, because you identify with your true divine nature, your true loving being. If God were in a body, who would God be? This is very big. When you go through the sun, when you go through a solar portal, you bring with you everything that is the true you. You leave behind or burn or incinerate or let go of away all of the things that are the aberrations that are not the true you. So it's not like you stop being you. I'm still going to be Aurora. I am Aurora as I was Aurora in my collective before I came into embodiment here in this physical body 20 years ago. I came through a solar portal to come here. I came here as with that level of innocence, and I've maintained my level of innocence, and I know who I am and who I'm not. And then when I exit here, I will be leaving behind all the things that I'm not and taking with me only the things that I am. Like, that's how you do it. So I'm like, yeah, like I have a shirt and I have a house, but like, you don't take those things with you, but you take with you the truest nature and the truest aspects of your being. And every day, what defines my behavioralism is the embodiment state of what would God be doing if God were here in this particular body, in this particular life, on this particular time trajectory. So I have a different DNA. I have a different set of fingerprints. I have a different place where I was born and place where I'm moving through in my life. Some of you were born in Texas. Some of you were born in India. Some of you were born in Africa or Australia. You have different timelines, different shapes of your life, different trajectories, unique genetic codes. You are God if God had been born in that body. And your life exploration and series of refinements going through your soul refinery here, that vortex-shaped chakra system, means that you are learning these lessons from a particularly different vector, and we will all coincide in the I am God moment, just like the shape of a dandelion head. All of these unique lives. This is what unity consciousness is. Every single person that is tuned in here today, Trish, Melissa, Hans, Martin, are all ascending masters. They are all different versions of God's self in different bodies, coming from different directions of the time field, all of whom will reach that central core timeline, converge like these beautiful, amazing vectors at infinity, and we will meet again with all of us in our ascended master formats. I know you will recognize me. I'll recognize you guys too, except the truest aspects of ourself will be there, but what will not be there is any distorted characteristics, diseases, or aspects of self that are purely temporal. Got it? You live as a perfect conduit and exemplar of God. You are God. You are that higher dimensional entity. You contain within your own brain tiny neural impulses jumping across your synapses, even as you jump across the larger time synapse of your life. So you are thinking, even as you are a thought within the larger mind of God. And blockage beings have totally forgotten that they are God. But again, in the sacred shadow work, all you have to do is be like, ding, here's the yellow light on you. They're like, oh, I'm God. I remember everything, and I'm not supposed to be acting in this way. But some of them, you're like, bing, here's light. They're like, stop it. Stop giving us light. Stop it. I want to be distorted and be a monster. Yes, how inconvenient. You're giving me light. Stop giving me light. I wish to continue to live in ignorance. They are refusal to move and grow or face their karma has caused humans to be farmed for negativity. Okay, wait. Blah, blah, blah. Blockages are diametrically opposed in the opposite direction away from the source. For so long, it is hard for them to even imagine or remember that they are who they are. They are originally pieces of God. Remember, pieces of God stuck together. And then one of them said, I'm going away from God because we're the stuff that is not supposed to exist. That's how far back you have to go with them to have them remember that they actually came from God. Sending them into the sun or the great galactic central sun is taking these negative consciousnesses who are stuck out of their stuckness. Their refusal to move and grow or face their karma has caused humans to be farmed for negativity. So again, to reiterate, those bad math students don't want to learn. They want to stay stuck in your chakras. They don't belong in your chakras. They're farming you for negativity. They're making you feel depression, anxiety, unhappy feelings, anything less than supreme joy, and giving you diseases and making you have things that make you die like cancer. That's what they are. That's what they do. And they absolutely, they're the cause of all diseases, including cancer and viruses. They are the cause of all anxiety and mental diseases and degradations of your mental functioning. If you are not a perfect supercomputer with a perfect photographic memory and the capacity to do everything, it's because of them, because you have poops in your chakras that are making it very, very difficult for you to behave as a galactic supercomputer and be in alignment with yourself as God. What do? I fly in rainbow lasagna around, up and over all of that poop and reconnect with and reclaim all of that energy that is divine thought patterns that's going to the grocery store. And I remember who I am and I bring it back in here to all of you. And I'm like, groceries, handing out the avocados. Remember who you are, everyone. Remember who you are. It's what my artwork is. It's what these classes are. It's what my music is. It's what everything is that I do. Reminders to all of you that you are God. This is a reminder of you, of your greatness. Why in the world would I do this instead of being in competition with you? Because the competition model should be like, I'm God, not you, and I'm going to be the supreme God, the muscle man above everybody, and smack down. That is very silly, because that's not unity consciousness. Because when you really look at unity consciousness, you're like, I'm God, and all of you are God, and I want you all, God's self, I want God's self to awaken to God's self truthfulness and to ascend and to reach these levels of reconnectivity and self-remembrance and be there at that infinity level coming home. At home, there are all of these beings who existed as distorted versions of self. Some of them are so distorted you wouldn't recognize them. Like if there's, like I said, some raving lunatic drug addict on the street and you only know them as being like, extremely disheveled and diseased, their ascended master version might be like a PhD, they might be the most intelligent person in the world, but that's the version of self that never ever tried heroin, that never got hooked, that never, made it to the streets being homeless or whatever it was. That version of self is almost unrecognizable to you because you only got to see them in their broken, disheveled state. So there are broken, disheveled people who are profoundly diseased, who had their arms and legs chopped off, had their faces chopped off, had their genetics mutilated with cancer, had all these different things happen to them. They're almost unrecognizable to you when they're in their true ascended master format, because then they have everything. They are in a state of supreme health and they exist as eternal beings forever. Those beings who exist on the membranes of death, They cannot eat physical food. Physical food is love. They don't have physical bodies, and they choose to feed off of you and your love and your physical body. They don't have a body. You worked hard to get a body and to be able to be here and eat food and be conscious and go through the difficulties of the refinery of consciousness and being committed to getting to that wormhole. And they did not. Circulating your submerged consciousness until you find the wormhole and your commitment to your refinement. You're in school and you are going to get refined until you graduate. And they are not. They're entities stuck on the membrane. They cannot eat physical food, be alive, and they don't have a wormhole to get back to the source. And they're not here for learning. Like, they're learning in a larger sense, but not in the sense of being in college. It's kind of like, I don't know, like, are the rats that are in the walls of your college dormitory in college? Like, no, technically they are not matriculated to the curriculum. They don't have books. They don't have, backpacks. They don't have a degree. They don't graduate. They are not supposed to be actually part of the college experience. If you are perfectly in alignment with the sun, you don't get erased, you get energized. This is my experience of going through the sun. I've spoken about this before in these classes. When you go to the sun, you don't have baggage. Every single one of your chakras is perfectly in alignment, and you go through that energy portal. You don't get erased, you get energized. You don't have to let go of who you are. You don't have to stop thinking that you're a person. You don't have to forget who you are at all. In fact, you gain continuity of consciousness. You remember everything about who you are, what you've been through, what brought you to this moment, what your name is, what are the true parts of yourself, what you've truly done, what is your true mission. You remember all of that stuff throughout your life. Please prioritize all of that stuff as what really matters. I'm a musician. That's the stuff that really matters. I get up early every day and I'm working on my music because that's who I really am. That version of self comes with me through the portal. Don't have to leave that behind to be like, see you, musician, you're not the real me at all. But you know who's not the real me? A sense of competition in my musicianship, a sense of comparing myself to others. American Idol, who's the bigger singer? Who can sing the high notes? Who's better? Who's this? Who's more this? That's not the real me. The real me is a musician who simply loves music and loves playing and loves connecting with people. What is the significance? Sending imperfect chakra beings into the sun, it unmakes them. What is the significance of this? Perfect chakras align perfectly with the larger solar being. You are a fractal, cosmic representative of pure truth. All of your chakras are pure truth. Everything that you embody is pure truth. And so too is the sun and the entire star system, pure truth. In extremely long lifespan of the Pooties on the interstices, they've been avoiding the reckoning or facing the music, having any kind of an assessment about who they are and what they've done through their lives or unlives or afterlives or semi-existences. In contrast to the undying consciousness, which we could call Christ consciousness. So there is an undying consciousness called Christ consciousness that has total longevity and total eternity and lives forever. That is what I am a part of. That is where I come from. That is why I wear a crystalline cross in representation of my alignment and affiliation with the Christ consciousness, being of pure longevity. This is very, very different than those occupiers of the interstices who have artificially extended and supported and sustained their existence and their consciousness by feeding off of the living. Two very different states of being, and one of which has longevity and is sustainable, and one of which has longevity but is not sustainable. They constantly need a new influx of fresh victims and fresh meat. Otherwise, their entire house of cards tumbles on down. So redirect the Pooties' consciousness into the sun, not allowing them to feed off of you, not allow them to consume you. You lovingly take their consciousness and send it to the sun for a sun bath. And as those solar rays penetrate your consciousness, it washes away anything that isn't really you. Maybe with them, what remains is a tiny spark, or maybe everything washes away. So I also want you to know right now that we've technically made it to the sun. Like, all of this has been recorded on the journey to get to the sun, to get to home. We are really in this cosmic moment of reconnection, coming home, personal and planetary ascension. I often, in my meditative times, think of myself as already being in the sun. And what it is like to be in the sun is to be completely with my own inner sun and the larger sun overlapping, knowing that I am creating all reality structures with my mind, knowing that I'm living within a floating mental construct created completely out of my own rapport with myself as God. Like I'm guiding with God, I'm guiding with God, I'm making the world, I make the world that I inhabit, and that I am identifying fully with those longevity aspects of self that are part of what is Christ consciousness. And the putis, they do not have a sustenance or a continuation in that realm. Like that's really the most effective thing for me to be able to tell you. You don't have to send them to the sun, because literally we're in the sun right now, and we are in that solar portal, and we're in that moment of being completely bathed in light, which is truth, which is information, which is divine knowingness. And everything that is not truthful gets washed away or incinerated or unmade in light of that truth. And the unmaking is ascending to entropy. That's really the best way I can describe all of this. Energy flowing around the entire entity of God consciousness that we reside within has to do with cosmology, the story of how consciousness became splintered away and came to reside on the membranes of death. Death as a positive, healthy aspect of the flow of energy, consciousness, and freedom in the cosmos. When math homework is wrong, math homework should go to the membrane of death, red X's should be applied, then you should go back and try it again. Putis came from the source also, but now reside in an extremely distorted position. Please note their oldest, truest religion was to go away from God and go directly to entropy of non-being. That is a way of worshiping God. It's like saying, God, we know that we are causing you trouble. We know we're not supposed to be in existence. We are going to go into non-existence for you as our devotion and commitment to you. They became turned around in their journey at some point and began to feed off of the light and the energy of the living in order to sustain themselves away from God. They are aspects of self. What is the personality of God made of? Individual aspects of self that have been refined. One example is tenacity, characteristics that are worthy of going on, helpful to consciousness on its journey, and contrast that with characteristics that don't serve. But tenacity can be like this: I'm going away from God and I'm not going to listen, and I'm going to be a shadow presence and I'm never going to change, blah, blah, blah. That is the shadow presence of the characteristic known as tenacity. Tenacity can be, I'm going to go away from God and I'm going to get back to the source. I'm going to get back to the source. But it can also be, I'm never going to get back to the source. On an individual level, figuring out the recipe of personality characteristics that serve the larger God entity within you. You're like, I need a little bit of this and a little bit of this and a little bit of this as the recipe for who I am in order to serve the larger God entity. The blockage entities became outcast, exploring the journey away from the source is a positive personality characteristic, but the tendency to never return and be stuck in exploration forever is not a positive personality characteristic, because all of these are shards of God that need to return. P.S. Reminder, entropy is a way of returning home, but is a way of returning home to the singularity through a complete lack of being, lack of consciousness, lack of energy, lack of motivation, lack of volition, no movement, no vector, being frozen, having no energy. But that is also a return to divinity. So this going away from God to go into entropy is like being at unity consciousness, but in a different direction, in a different level of experience, having a different quality of experience, but not suffering in hell, which is what they've done for a very long amount of time. And I say this all the time because they've caused me an enormous amount of torture. I do not use that word lightly. Torment is different. They've tormented me, they've tormented you. They have intentionally tortured me because they're like, we don't want to change. We don't want you to change us. You inconvenient flying rainbow lasagna, we will torture you to try to get you to stop being and doing what you're doing because we don't want to change, shift, or move. And really, this is the moment, the planetary moment and cosmic moment, when they get to go to entropy and they don't have to live on the membranes of death in hell worlds, because their next plan after they trash this world is move on to the next dimension and trash that one too, kind of like the never-ending story where the nothing just keeps on eating, just keeps eating things away, and it keeps just going, go on to the next one. No, not okay. And it ends here. It ends here. This is a very important, isn't even the word, profoundly important moment that we are in. Your lives and your experiences and your journeys and your consciousness really, really, really matter. And the events of your life and your successes really, really matter. Like, you have no idea how much I am rooting for you and invested in your success, to be able to become the God beings that you are, to be able to remember yourself as God means an enormous amount to the entirety, to me, to many others that are working to make this a reality. Energy comes off of the sun, and it is energy of awareness or consciousness. Lack of energy or lack of awareness is darkness or entropy. The shadow is cast from a higher dimensional object onto a lower dimensional realm. Something gets lost and it can be distorted. As an allegory for what is happening on the higher dimensional realm of consciousness, ascended masters can be human, humanoid, or totally other. So I glossed over that in my notes a little bit. This is an allegory. The idea of a shadow that is cast from a physical object. Allegory, 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 allegory. Non-literal, non-literal, non-literal. It is a way of speaking about something that is difficult to be put into the English linear language. So please comprehend that. Please acknowledge that. And also please acknowledge that although shadow presences exist as the innate, inescapable aspect of solidified objects, I've brought this one up a lot in doing this kind of jujitsu of the mind. A candle flame casts no shadow. A box does. Like if I held up this solidified thing and put a bunch of light on it, and then this side there would be shadow. But you know it does not cast a shadow? The flame of a candle. The wax of a candle casts a shadow, but not the flame of a candle. So in that sense, it is an allegory that breaks down. If being an ascended master is being a being of pure light, the flame, the plasma of a candle. You do not cast a shadow. But in the recording that I was talking about, what I was trying to say was that each of these ascended masters have this implied shadow presence. And if it is troubling you, you can call upon the ascended master to whom it is connected and say, hey, come get your shadow because it's ticking me off. It's doing a lot of unpleasant things to me. So this is big because some things are your responsibility where you're like, I emanated that poop. I have to do something about it. Or I emanated that bad math homework. I have to do something about it. And sometimes it's not from you. Sometimes it's from someone or something else, which is also God's self. But in terms of cosmic responsibility, you could say, hey, ascended master, this is your shadow that you are projecting that is trying to eat me and hold me as a hostage in hell. Do something. You are an ascended master. It is your responsibility. And at that level, when you get through the wormhole, everything is about personal responsibility. They are obliged to do something about it. So that's a good little thing to put in your back pocket to remember for any of these demons or lower vibrational negative thought entities that are assaulting you. Be like, that, you're actually the projection negative inverse of a ascended master. They should really take care of their I want to say SHIT, to take care of their dirty socks, take care of their stuff that they need to clean up. But going past that, the idea that ascended masters can be human, humanoid, or totally other. Human, humanoid, totally other. They can be lactobacillus, they can be dog-shaped, they can be from the gas giant Jupiter, they can be from your anus. Having fully descended into the physical realm and then reascended. That's what it is to be, these are athletes of the spirit realm. A master because you mastered your persona and you mastered your mind, and an ascended master because you went all the way down into physicality and then came all the way back out. This is the I Am God circuit. These are athletes of the spirit realm who lived their lives, our lives, in training like Olympic athletes. This is what we do. We are in here as athletes training to be able to exit the wormhole. The thought at the final moment, I am God, and go on to infinity, and that they have lower vibrational negative shadow selves. So that's it. And the idea is, so like any ascended master, like Saint Germain or Jesus Christ or any of these, people whose names we know and many whose names we don't know, that whatever they are, that there might be something that has, if you take it and exaggerate it and turn it upon its head, becomes something not so good. Like I mentioned, tenacity. Generosity is another good one. Like as an ascended master, many of us exhibit the trait of generosity. Of course, I will give to you. But then the negative shadow aspect would be, I will give to you to the point that I have nothing left to give myself, and I'm completely destitute and on the floor with nothing, no energy, no money, no this, no that. That is not what generosity is supposed to be. Generosity is supposed to be a givingness of yourself, in that you have extra to give. And then you also are generous in receiving, because you get what you give in life, and you give out 10 units of energy, you give dinner to someone else, you give positive uplift to someone else, and then you are generous to yourself in your receiving from others who are also there to reflect and take care of you. There is an aspect of consciousness that fits perfectly within that template of the cosmos, and many objects that quote unquote don't fit in the lock. This is just the neutral presence way of talking about it. Taking cosmic responsibility, the ethics of even just existing. This goes to ascended masters. It begins to understand that because you exist as a solidified light being, you have an unintended consequence of the shadow presence. So that's it. If you're a light being, but you can also be considered like a plasma candle that doesn't cast a shadow. But if you are a solidified being in the physicality presence, cast a shadow. And then what are the negative inverse aspects of your tenacity or generosity or creativity or any of those things? We are heading for a 360-degree circle of total awareness. But as long as shadow exists, there is a lack of awareness. Get it? We are rectifying the ignorance of the experience. That is in ideal forms what we are here doing. The beings who do not send back their experiences to the sun in real-time broadcasts. Hey, the sun, light beings, this is what's going on here. Let me tell you all about it. They have become in dead zones. They have all of this accumulated trauma, but we can call it accumulated emotional data that has not yet been processed, that they have not yet transmitted to the sun. And the real healing happens when, like, all of these beings, they're demons and pooties, and they want to eat us, and they're toothy, slavering monsters, like, saliva dripping down, and I'm going to eat you like a mean monster. They have a lot of accumulated trauma. That is really why they are who they are and why they're acting the way that they are. It's not an excuse or a justification. They must take radical self-responsibility, but they need to communicate that trauma to the sun and be healed, so that they don't have to continue to re-traumatize us and continue to go into parallel dimensions and cause another trauma cycle. So this is really about healing. The last song on the record of you is Ascended Mastery, in a perfect alignment with divine consciousness. Old-fashioned record, like Led Zeppelin. Put it on your record player with a needle and an arm that goes onto it. And it circulates from the periphery towards the central spindle. And the very, very, very last song on that record is the song of your life as an ascended master. So the first songs that were on the periphery, those are like, ones where you died and they were imperfect and they were flawed math precepts and flawed math equations. And you got better and better at playing your music and expressing yourself through time until you got to the song. There's the last song on the album. Tap, tap, tap. The conductor prepares. Play the last song on your album. Tap, tap, tap. It's you as an ascended master in every single thing in your life, from every breath and every movement and every thought structure and every way that you touch on other people's lives, everything that you're doing, and all the way that you're caring about others and yourself and the world that you're within, is all the expression of yourself as an embodiment of the divine. And you know that you are God. And you know that as you move, you are moving in divine patterns. And as you paint or sing or make music, you are doing all of what you do in divine patterns, and then culminating the last chord in your song is I'm God. That whole entire spiral circular journey all the way up to the top. I'm God. And doing it at the same time. Let me play a complementary chord here that all of these other beings are also playing. I'm God. Everybody's God. I'm amazing. This is very idealistic, but it is what is actually happening after healing all of this stuff that is the unhealed shadow presences. It is necessary to go through the long spiral of peripheral lives in order to learn what was going on there. You went through all of those songs on the album that were not the best songs. Like, I'm sure everybody has an album, old-fashioned style, where you're like, okay, not a playlist, but you're like, I don't really like this song is kind of okay, but then that song is my song. But on a record album, you listen to all of these other songs first before you get to the song you really want to listen to. And it's just a different style of listening than when CDs were invented and now we're playlists and you just skip directly to the song you want. Emanations from the sun, timelines and possibilities, slow down and become a being who has experiences. If they are not unraveled, they are stuck on the membrane, and the sun has a little tiny blind spot shaped like a time capsule that never made it back home, and the sun doesn't know what is going on with them. That's the unhealed trauma of these occupiers of the interstices. They're not yet returned and reconnected to the emanator of the experiences. They have not yet faced the music, their personal responsibilities. I can't remember that time you made a terrible life decision that made you get stuck on the membranes of death. Yeah, I remember that. Pepperidge Farm remembers that. Yes, I'm being lighthearted because a lot of them and their lack of responsibility is actually not very fun or pleasant. The whole system of oppressing humanity was set up by these occupiers of the interstices so that they could feed. That's part of the anger that I feel. The sun has a huge blind spot, a shadow area where there is no light. That's big. Sun is highly intelligent, full of data. It needs that information about all of that accumulated trauma. We are in the process of bringing light to that shadow area. That is also what our ascension journey is here. As God embodied here, you and me and everyone who's watching this video, we're like, hey, fast forward to the bubble bath. I want to be the ascended master version of me, in the I am God moment. I want to be home. I understand how uncomfortable it can be here. We are also working for the sun because we are the sun, and the sun has a giant blind spot. Places where the sun never got the information about certain types of beings that are now stuck on the membrane of death. And the sun needs that information. And our journeys are an essential part of sending the sun that information so that everything gets rectified and everything gets healed. What we don't do is just be like, see ya, suckers. I'm going to heaven, bubble bath time, and you can rot in hell. No, we really can't do that. This has to be an overarching healing that involves everything. Ascended masters have to take responsibility for their lower selves. These beings, I want to get back to them. When we experience psychic attack, I send the attacker to a sun bath. Yes, and this is also from 10 years ago. And since I'm made of pure love and there's nothing to eat off of me, I take them with love and bring them back to their solar consciousness, the divine source of energy, bathed in sunlight, and all that is not you will be washed away. Well, believe me, I do a lot of this assessing of their programs, of their DNA and what they are as AI or semi alive beings that have pseudo intelligences and different programs. And I tell them, like, look, here's where your math homework is wrong, and here's the stuff that you need to change. And a lot of the time they're like, oh, Aurora, like, you're just a snack and we're just going to eat you. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they're not always respectful and open to what I am saying to them in terms of really valuable information that can set them free. And I'm like, but wait, guys, I'm giving you information to set you free. Like, don't eat the one person who can actually make you go out of a hellish realm of suffering into a beautiful, peaceful state of non-being. And that, I'm kind of steadily chipping away at this sense of like, we just want to feed, we just want food. And I'm like, wait, don't eat this food. This food actually contains flying rainbow lasagna, which is a way that you can get out of your horrific levels of suffering and not have to continue to perpetrate more trauma and suffering on others. Little by little, like I said, I am chipping away. They've perpetrated terrible crimes. You could describe them as monstrous creatures, demonic and evil. And that is a direct quote from 10 years ago for anyone that would like to take issue with me, my extemporaneous descriptions of them. Returning to the sun is an act of love, ending hatred and torment and evil, which is washed away. Let me reiterate that. Returning to the sun is an act of love, ending hatred and torment and evil, which is washed away. Ascended masters have to take responsibility for their lower selves. God consciousness wants to know itself, the totality, including the lower shadow self. When you are attacked by a putti, there's an ascended master that is beholden to that shadow self. I call upon you in order to rein in your lower vibrational negative self because it is attempting to harm me. Big. And that's for any of these occupiers of the interstices. When you die, this is big, you will not die. I'm going to say it again. When you die, you will not die. You will become a part of something much larger that you are already a part of, but which you are not yet able to perceive. You are part of this much larger overarching entity of God consciousness. All of these experiences, including being attacked by lower vibrational shadow beings and becoming an ascended master, are all part of the journey of God consciousness coming to know itself. When one directs these lower vibrational aspects of self into the sun, it is a washing away of the distorted aspects that are false, that are not who you really are, or who that being really is, and are only left with the true light of consciousness. Each ascended master is a particular flavor or color and contains particular recipe or personality aspects. And when you make the full circuit from the sun outward to physical and back to the source, again, those aspects exist eternally. It's a perpetual motion machine that continues forever. Yes, your one loop coming out from the sun into physicality and going back, it's a perpetual motion machine, but not in a negative way. Because everyone is like, oh no, Groundhog's Day, time looping, we hate it because it's so uncomfortable. This is, again, quality of existence. When you are the ascended master, you're playing the best song on your album. It's the one you want to play over and over. It's the best version of you that has zero disease, total longevity, total divine presence, and is doing everything wonderful to uplift the world around you. Certain recipe of characteristics are desirable and appropriately shaped, and that one wishes to carry forward into the future. And ancestors from the past and descendants going forward into the future, be they celestial or corporeal beings, the experiences of being the ascended master persona is the perfect intertwining of these various aspects of self. Get it? Beings that are made of pure light that come from the stars. This is very different than beings that fly and clank like metal spaceships and decide they're going to genetically modify humans so they can be containers here. These are two very, very, very different things. All right, you have a celestial aspect of self that does come from the sun and the stars, that travels on wings of pure love. Does this sound familiar? That is who you are, and you're part of the Aurora Collective. And I'm here in a backward bending time loop in order to help aspects of Aurora's self to become Aurora's self. And you know what I don't do? Take you and put you in my genetic modification CRISPR machine, and I'm going to put some of me into you and some of you into you, and then maybe throw in like a bat and a lizard and an eye of newt, like this is where I'm coming from on this, and then mix you all together in a recipe and say, that's the new human, that's who and what you are. No, I don't do that. What I do is I vibrate in on Flying Rainbow Lasagna oscillation trajectory. I emit my truthful Flying Rainbow Lasagna music. I'm singing my lasagna song and I'm singing it out to you. And some of you are like, I love that song. Sing it again. I'm going to like get all of that lasagna into me. And some of you are like, stop it. I'm crying. Go away. I'm rocking in place like you're making me change. Stop making me change. Some of them are very threatened by me and inconvenienced by me. And then some of the people are neutral. But this is all about opportunity to change and grow it. I'm looking at my notes. Celestial or non-corporeal beings, the experience of being the ascended master persona is the perfect intertwining of these various aspects of self. Aspects of self that come from the sun and the stars and purely spiritual or non-physical levels of being. That absolutely is the definition of what Aurora is. Even though I'm not the only aspect of being that is at that level, please know that I am one influencer, ancestor, and progeny of yours. That means a child that you give birth to. That's someone in the future. That is you. This is big stuff. Please note, this is not just about your biological lineage, it's also about your soul lineage. So let's say you are in a physical body that has the biological lineage of Northern Europe. You're like, am I connected to Africa and the people of Africa? Yes.
Yes, you've lived in many bodies that are the beautiful bodies of people of Africa with different features and different skin colors. And yes, you've lived in Australia. And yes, you've been indigenous people. And yes, you've been transplanted people that came as immigrants at another time, or whatever, cultural invaders. You've been all of these things. I'm going to break into different songs. And please note that the ideas that you share and the way that you have lived during your life is how you propagate your ideas through the world, even more strongly than having a child. So let's say you have a baby, you have a big tummy, your baby comes out, and then you teach your baby 1, 2, 3s and ABCs, and this is what the world is shaped like. And that's valid. And that's how you cultivate one person. And then they look at you like, Mommy, you gave me my worldview. Thank you. You can also do that by being a visionary or a thought leader. Like when we think about Sir Isaac Newton, he had a particular way of looking at the world. He wrote it down. He shared it with other people. We all looked at the world through his eyes because of how he shared, because we are not his babies. You're not necessarily part of the lineage of Sir Isaac Newton, but your mind is connected to him. You get it? Or the mind of Mozart making amazing music, or the mind of an architect who made an amazing monumental sculpture, or pyramid structure that is part of what is your world. Like that is all, we are the thought children being influenced by those beings. And similarly, let's say you write a really powerful song that everybody gets to know and love, and then future generations sing your song. I always use Stairway to Heaven as an example, but it's just like, it's a good song, but it's not necessarily the penultimate song. But anyway, we learn that song, we sing it to our little children in the cradle, and then they sing it to their children, and this thought structure goes onward. Or how about the Flying Rainbow Lasagna? You are my thought children. I came here as a thought parent with this concept, with this idea. I have taught you my worldview. I have not given birth to a physical child with my tummy sticking out and going into the labor room in the maternity ward. What I have done is shared with you my vibration, my dance, my thought structure, my vision, my cosmology, my perspective, in all the same ways that you teach children. Like children say, Mommy, Daddy, where did I come from? Why am I here? Why is the world shaped like it is? Why is that man mean? Like, why are there homeless people? Like little children, you take them to the city and they're like, Mommy, Daddy, like, why is that man in a tent? And you have to answer all of these questions. I've been answering all of these questions for you in the most wonderful way of being a cosmic parent, giving you life guidance. And when I say cosmology, that is a viewpoint of the structure of reality. Why are you here? What is your reason for existence? How is reality structured? All of these things have a great deal to do with your motivation, your sense of self, and your destination in getting through the world. I give you this information because I am God's self, moving toward that I am God moment. And I want you to reach the I am God moment too, and preferably with the least amount of toil, like with the least amount of difficulty and heart suffering. I'm like, just go directly to the I am God moment. Let's do this, people. Yeah, we want to do that now, not in 20 million lives in the future or over 20 million more time loops. Let's do this now. Let's remember and reconnect the I am God moment. So it is having a big influence on those who came after you. That is absolutely my reason for being and my presence here. My artwork, my paintings, the ideas that I have shared with humanity, these are like seeds that I intentionally came here to plant in the garden. Don't get a garden by accident. Now, moving back to the earlier part of this presentation, it is intention, it is cultivated. I put these seeds into the human mind very intentionally because I knew that I had to come back here to this point in human timelines, events, and experiences in order to share these ideas here, in order to begin to shift and redirect the entire ship of consciousness to flow in a different and better direction. And I'm so pleased and gratified. I've been here for 20 years. I've seen humanity make so many changes about how to structure your economy, how to change social structure, how to change your ways of daily activity and earning money and what is called work and commodification. And now there's so much about the gift economy and energy exchange. Like, I am proud to say I influenced a lot of that, changing ideas and ideals about cannabis and making it into like a dietary superfood. All of these ideas about returning to becoming God and moving into higher dimensional states. Like this, all of this is not by accident. I planted those flowers very intentionally. And as a gardener, I am so gratified to see those flowers blooming. I'm like, I planted that flower understanding about the torus and toroidal structure. Now I see it blooming 15 years later, but sometimes fruit trees just take a long time to really get established. Yeah, when I first came here, no one knew what a torus was. No one knew what any of these things were. And I'm so pleased that they now a lot of people do know about them. Hold on. So I have absolutely planted these flowers in your mind intentionally, cultivated events here intentionally, encouraged you on your journey, just like parents encourage children to grow into certain self states and become their greatness. And like a good parent, what I don't do is say like, get a job, become a lawyer, you know, like that's not what I do. What I do instead is say, become your greatness. I believe in you. Become your greatness. I believe in you. I'm almost at the end of my notes. Ascended masters have continuity of consciousness, and that means that you remember all of your experiences and take them with you. You have access to all of it. When you go through the solar portal, you do not get a mind wipe, because you identify with the true aspects of you, the parts that are love. All of the real things that you did out of love stay with you. And all the stuff that's not really you, like your annoyance when you hear someone slurping their coffee or whatever is a big no-no, whatever drives you crazy. That's not the real you. That's just the you who is minorly agitated. You know, that happens sometimes in life. We each have many thought beings speaking to us, putting thought energy into us through our corporeal existence. And the ones that stay with us, this is big, are the ones who are eternal, and they make up our chakras when they are in perfect alignment and keep our chakras in perfect alignment. You have a team around you all the time. I say this all the time, guys. This is what this is, a team of coherent light beings. In your own mind, there are some thought beings that are not the real you, and they're not really meant to be a part of your chakra system. And I explained them in great depth today. Now let me give an equal amount of thought energy and vocal energy to describing that you have beings that are really you. They are your family of light. They're your rainbow family of coherent light, and they are your true chakra system, and they are whom you are when your chakras are in perfect alignment, and they come with you. The other stuff gets burned away, frittered away, is released, goes into entropy, goes into a state of non-being. But you remember who you really are. You remember what you've really been through. You don't bring with you stupid baggage. That birthday card I was supposed to send in 3rd grade and I never did. Oh, I shall never ascend now. No, that is nonsense. That stuff doesn't really matter. But what really matters is times like when you might have saved somebody's life. Every one of us has been a lifesaver to someone else at some point, where you helped someone in kindness or said something to them or did something to them that was amazing and supportive and kept them in buoyancy, didn't let them slide down into like the cracks of being lost. And you might not even known that you were doing that. You might not even have known how profound what you were doing was doing. Like you might have just gotten someone a meal or a hot coffee, and you didn't know that you were being an absolute angelic presence in their life, that it reaffirmed their belief in life, that they're like, I have the strength to live again because someone offered me what is, you know, a small kindness or whatever, lent someone $100, and then they weren't evicted from their apartment. Any of these things have a profound impact on other people's lives. That's who you really are. So brief aside, because I know I'm heading into like the 3rd hour, and this is a long recording. We're going to wrap it up really soon. Back when I lived in Atlantis, here is what ascension was like. Actually, it was not a group ascension. It was an individual athletic experience, like the Olympics, you know, being on the balance beam or whatever it was. And what you would do is you would go to the sacred mountain and you would perambulate and walk up the sacred mountain. And as you did, you would return to certain life experiences that you had had. interactions and experiences that you had with people, and they were all very important. Sometimes it was a conflict that you had with someone. You meet them again, and they're like, I'm this person that you had conflict with. You're like, oh yeah, I had a lot of conflict with you. And the person then says, and this is what I learned, and this is how I grew. Thank you for being a person in my life. Light returns to you. And you literally, your coherent light body is built in that moment. And then you walk further on your pilgrimage. You meet another person. This person is like, I was feeling so destitute and so depressed, and you gave me whatever, a thing, like a small thing, like I said, a sandwich, a crystal, a kindness gesture. And that was life-changing. You kept me from going into despondency. You kept me alive. Your kind words were magical and angelic and so amazingly present that I felt like God was real, and I had the strength and the courage to keep going. And more light comes to your face, and you keep going up this mountain, re-meeting all of these people who are crucial experiences of your life. And again, back then we might have lived like 500 years. So it was an extensive journey. And as you journey up the mountain peak to the top, you keep meeting these people that keep on building your light body. And it's with more and more and more, you get more and more and more light. You are accreting more and more coherent light until finally you get to the point where you're at the top of the mountain and you are ready to transcend and to ascend and have your I am God moment. And this person gives you your last bit of light. Puzzle pieces all come together and you're like, I remember I'm God. And then you go into that mental state that is the graduation state. And everyone who knew you and who was part of that ascension process, they remember you and you remember them, and they are very much a part of your narrative and your journey as I am you and you are me, and we're all these fractal reflections of one another. That's another song I could go into. It's a very deep song. I am you and you are me, and we are one together. Now I can get a little silly because Mo's at the end of my notes. But yeah, like Indra's pearls, we reflect and refract the truthful nature of each existence with one another. I know this as I'm going through my journey. I know this, and I've known this the whole entire time that I've been Aurora here for 20 years, that I've been meeting, interacting with fractal fragment aspects of myself, some of whom are in profound states of needing healing, raving madmen out there on the sidewalk, taking lots of drugs. They're aspects of self, but they're far away from who they should be. And then also people that are beautiful people like you in this class, that I'm like, I know Trish is an aspect of self. I know Melissa is an aspect of self. Hans, I know is an aspect of self. Martine, I know you are an aspect of self. I will name others in this class. Like, I know this was a weird time. I've been dealing with my regular mundane work, secular work, and people might not have been able to tune in or had a technological difficulty. Ellie, so many other people, Charlie B. Oh, now I feel on the spot and I don't necessarily remember so many long-term participants that I'm like, I know that these people are aspects of myself. And when I talk with them, I'm like, I know I'm talking to myself, but just in a different body, in a different life, coming from a different direction. And living in that way is a profound way, and also profoundly responsible. And also I celebrate people's journeys. Like, I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but I'll mention Hans because he's got some really good stuff going on in his life, where he's doing some art displays and really being creative and moving forward in positive, expansive ways. And I'm like, wow, like, I celebrate that aspect of self that is in a different body, that lives in a different part of the world and is going on his magical journey in amazing ways. And our lives reflect one another and they intertwine. And then at a certain point, we will meet again at infinity as ascended masters. And we will remember this journey, and we will remember all that we experienced with one another on the journey to get there. That is not the stuff that gets washed away, because that is all about love. We remember all those things that are about love. So when you align yourself with right thought beings, you will be an ascended master and live forever within a larger body of thought consciousness. Dun, 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 big spoiler alert, you become the sun. You become an ascended master. You become a coherent thought being. You are filled with an energy field of these chakras that are made of coherent thought beings that are other ascended masters. And you live within the solar presence, which is the stellar presence, a giant big ball of floating light that's genius, genius level of intellect, genius level of creativity, similar to the human acculturated mythology of the sun bark of Ra. You are immortal, long-term living gods and goddesses. And you choose who gets to live through your life when you are an ascended master in reality now, which aspects of your DNA, which characteristics, which you choose, which types of thoughts you are sending forward into the future. Send out loving thoughts. I'm creating a loving future. I've said that for 20 years. I'm cultivating a loving future, and we're working on love as opposed to a fear-based culture. And that's in so many different movies and so many different teachings, and so many different people are aligning with that now. Again, I'm so happy to see that thought seeds that I planted growing into that cultural precept, moving towards love, the things that you really want, not just running away from fear, from the things that you don't want. And then in order to make it through the wormhole, sometimes necessary to let go of aspects of persona that no longer serve. Some behavior patterns lead you to the membrane of death. And these would be things like negative personality characteristics, negative behaviors, addictions, and just being clinging or stuck on things that are purely temporal. Like, you know, something, I like my shirt. I made my shirt. I like it a lot, and I like the way I look in it, but it's not something that I have to be married to for the rest of eternity. And it can be big to be like, I let go of or release these things that have served me in life or during this time of inhabitation and corporeality. They are not me anymore, but they were very important to me when I was corporeal. And they're usually inconsequential things like, you know, I am not defined by this beautiful goblet. It's not the everythingness of who I am, but then to contrast, I'm defined by my artwork, and I claim those paintings as a definition of self. I wanted to talk to you about, like, Van Gogh, that we will meet in infinity, an ascended master version of Van Gogh who painted amazing paintings, but he didn't shoot himself in a cornfield. He had a much, much, much better life, much better quality of life, and he never died. You get it? So we get to meet all of these amazing people that we feel resonate in our lives, and that their journeys and the things that we feel are a truthfulness inside of us, we get to meet them as their greatness of self. I get to meet all of my friends as the greatness of self that never had diseases and never died of cancer, never had diminishments or amputations or anything like that. And yes, it is an amazing experience. So this has been a long recording. Let me finally get back into the chat and read what's going on here. Melissa says, we act as refiners and send undesired to entropy. Ooh, yeah, that's exactly right. And we do that. That's part of the cosmic law precept. Like, my body is my refinery. This is my real estate. I have precious real estate. Why am I here? Why am I not floating in a bubble bath, eating the strawberries? Come in. Countdown, take me away, moon. I am here because I have valuable real estate. I have a physical presence, and my physical presence has a chakra presence, and it is a refinery of my own soul and my own life experiences. And I am able to and allowed to use my refinery here to send to entropy those beings and aspects of consciousness that don't belong in existence. There's an old song from Sesame Street, one of these things is not like the other. You know what I'm talking about, getting silly. The things that don't belong. Melissa also says the FRL shape is synonymous with your body's energetic shape, more organized with all qualities contained within one body, but put in their proper place, energy or entropy. That's exactly right. Beautifully well said. And Melissa, I know you've done a lot of work in terms of embodying the concept of the flying rainbow lasagna over many semesters and over many years of personal practice. This is like saying, this is my body, and these are all the things in my body that are supposed to exist. And then these are all the things in my body that are actually not supposed to exist. They're actually thought structures, behavior patterns, or actual DNA behaviors that are not supposed to be in existence, that do not lead to longevity, that are events that lead me to the membrane of death. They are all supposed to go to entropy. This is the graphic representation of non-duality. It's different than rejecting and being like, get out of the Garden of Eden. Like, I'm the angel that ejects you. You will get out of the Garden of Eden and suffer. It's not that. It is like saying, I see that you are in me. I see that you are not supposed to be in existence. I see that you are not supposed to be in existence because you don't have longevity and coherence and you're not playing the right music. So what I do is turn down the volume on those consciousness aspects. And that is not a painful thing for them. They're not like, ow, ow, stop turning down the volume on me. No, not at all. For them, it is a relief because this whole entire economy of hell, and I'll explain it more as we move forward in the semester, everything is predicated upon their fear of loss. There's never enough. There's never enough. And when you're a drug addict and you're itching at your skin, gotta have more, gotta have more. There's never enough. There's never enough. Imagine if you could say to someone in that addiction state, what would it be like for you if you never had to worry about getting another fix? If you never had to worry about eating another human mind, if you never had to worry about harvesting another human individual or collective society, if you could just go into a state of non-existence, not even existence. You don't have to try, you don't have to do, you don't have to go anywhere, you don't have to think, you don't have to speak, you don't have to have motivation or volition. You guys know how hard it is to work. When a lot of people are like, can't I just be dead and stop working? They're like, no, and I have to work in the afterlife. What if you don't have to work in the afterlife? What if you can simply be at peace? That is actually one of the best things that you can wish for someone who has died, is that their ego state is at peace. That which is not eternal simply rests in a peaceful state of entropy. There is not suffering, there is just lack of movement. Melissa says she's been working on self-healing concerning non-judgment of self and others, enjoying new perspectives after working on this a lot. Melissa, I can tell that you've really been on the journey of self-reflection, self-cultivation, thinking deeply about cosmology, about these real existential questions of why are we here? Why are we here in this format? What are the things that are inside of me in terms of thoughts and desires and behaviors? Who is the real me? Who is not the real me? And who do I want to be going forward? Hat tip to you, because I see all of your work. You are an athlete of the spiritual realm. I see you working out in the gym and getting stronger. And I'm very happy to be an athlete alongside of you. That is the non-competitive way of looking at all of this. As I said earlier in today's presentation, ascension and this personal unfoldment cannot be a competition. What it is like, it's like many birds on a migration together, and we're flying like a flock, or like many, whatever, horses, wild horses going across a plain, and everybody, you have to be in charge of your own limbs and your own capacity to be volitional and to move and to go. And we also really care about each other. I'm like, come on, get going. I'm going to encourage you. I'm giving you energy. I'm giving you support. I'm telling you that you can do it. And I'm also sometimes giving people directions, because I can also tell, like, I know the pathway goes this way. I'm going in this direction. I'll leave a marker for you, which is sometimes what these long distance runners do. They're like, okay, I'm a couple of miles ahead of you. I'm going to put a mark on this tree so you know, go in this direction. Don't fall over a cliff. That is my job. That is what I do. I care about you, Melissa, very much. She says, tears of gratitude for those kind words and thoughts. Feel you and love you all. Love back to you. I say it and I mean it. I love you. I'm in love with you. It's not romantic love. I'm not talking about marrying you in the physical world. I'm talking about being in love with you, my fellow traveler of consciousness and migrator on the soul's migration. I am God, and I know that you are also thinking the thought, I am God. I know that you are also God's self. That's what I always just want to make it very clear when I talk about these realizations. I am God. And then also I want everyone whose mind is out there thinking their own thoughts to think the thought in your own first person voice. I am God. Think I am God. It is revolutionary to do that. And this is not megalomania. This is also taking huge responsibility, because I am God. It's also like, I am making stuff happen. Like, I'm the one making stuff happen. I'm the one, like, when people are in gratitude for their food, like, thanks to God that I thank God for parking spaces all the time, like, because I really need them in the neighborhood where I live. It's a silly thing, but I need it. Anything that you need, that sustenance, comes from God. And then to thank God, and then to be God in God's shoes, in that presence. Say, I am God. And I gave myself that parking spot on that time when I really needed it, or sustained others. It's an amazing realization. It is almost beyond what I can put into human verbalized language. I really hope that you tune into the energetic telepathy, pure heart type of sharing that I do, that there's so much more. And I also really invite everyone, if you haven't already, it's in the advanced level 2 recorded lessons, lesson 12 for level 2. Really, really deep stuff. And I use a lot of drawings and diagrams, more than I did in class, because I just didn't want to have to take all the time. But that's where my notes come from. And read my notes. I'm going to just end the recording, but I'm also going to open the floor to discussion. It's just going to be a long upload. So thank you to everybody who is able to be here in the physical class now that we are on Saturday mornings, the Looney Tunes of our day. And also thank you to everybody who catches the archive. And I know that you'll get connected with me next week if you didn't know that the class is shifted to Saturday. Thank you. I'm going to end the recording now. Thank you.